Go ahead and jump in the chat. Let me know you're in the chat. Let me know if you can hear the voice. And then, yeah, we'll do a little check of the rest. Let's see here. Cool. Let me know if you can hear this, if you can hear the drums. This is what we're going to be talking about. These drums right here is what we're going to be talking about. So we want to make sure we can hear them. If we can hear them, give me a thumbs up in the chat and let me know. I do believe we should be able to hear them at the moment. All right, so let me know. Let's see here. See if I can get this live chat to look like a normal thing. Trying a little new setup. Instead of using my laptop for the chat, I may need to switch that up in just a second if I can't get it to go right. But yeah, jump in the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from, where you're tuning in from. And yeah, over the course of this, feel free to jump in if you have any questions. Throw those in the chat. I'm happy to answer whichever questions you have. What I want to talk about today is a couple of things. I completely redesigned my case because I was moving some stuff around so that I could add in some new modules and want to make sure that, wanted to make sure I had some space for it, so I needed to move some stuff around. So I basically took everything apart. I don't know if you saw what I posted on Instagram yesterday. Go check it out if you haven't, but it kind of showed the whole evolution of the build and you know what I was doing, taking everything apart, moving stuff around. So I'll go through that a little bit today. But really the whole point of the move around of the build was to be able to add in some new modules, which are specifically for drums and percussion, and to kind of organize some things into a way that makes a bit more sense. So a bit of static noise. That is this. That should go away. Let me know if that goes away. My stupid USB loop from charging up my little camera. So let me know if that went away. I think it should have, I believe. So, and then we may have, let me turn things down just a little bit. Cool. So yeah, so I wanted to, yeah, rearrange some stuff so that I could have some room for a new module or a few new modules and around some kind of drums and percussion stuff. So I figured we'd talk about that today so we can talk about the drums and percussion setup, how I'm using it, the new modules, how they work, what they are, all that kind of stuff. And then kind of how I reorganize stuff because I get lots of questions about it. So I wanted to throw that out there and answer them all at once. so I'm not answering back. I don't mind answering back to you guys on like Messenger and stuff, but this way I can kind of get the message or get the questions in real time and answer them in real time. So let's see here. Iceland, awesome. Welcome from Iceland. Looks like we have 2 from Iceland. That's even cooler. This time not from Germany, from Bosnia-Herzegovina. All right, well, welcome. Warsaw, Poland, awesome. Netherlands. I saw Ruffians here, so he's from Rotterdam as well. Fading Armageddon, I know he's from Chicago. Looks like we got quite a bit here, but yeah, keep putting into the chat where you're from, and we'll see how far this stream gets around the world. So first and foremost, you probably saw in the thing you clicked on that said we're going to be talking about the Ohmforce Bohm kick drum modules with plural because there's 3 of them that kind of all work together. And I don't do, just so you guys all know, if you haven't been on one of these streams, I don't do like paid promotion stuff. So what happens if ever I feature gear on here, the way it works is if there's something that I'm really interested in, I reach out to the companies and say, hey, I would love to give that a try. If it's something that I like, it may show up in my videos. If it's not something I like, it won't show up. And there's no kind of send me this thing and I'll do a video for you in exchange. So these guys have no idea that I'm doing this. So yeah, bonjour à toute l'équipe de Bohm en France. But yeah, so this will be a surprise to them too, because I actually wasn't planning on doing a video about this just yet because I only got it a few days ago. And it has been really interesting, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's really good for, what it's maybe not so good for. I keep getting asked a lot of questions. Is it better than this, or should you get it instead of this, or is it worth this? Most of those questions I can't answer because it's really going to depend on you and your use case and your sound that you're going for and how much space you have and case size and money and all that kind of stuff. So there's not really one good thing and one bad thing. It's, everything's going to be different, and it's all a matter of how creative you are to come up with different ways to use stuff, right? So we're all going to use stuff a little bit different. And so that's what I wanted to talk about. So the Bohm guys did send this over to me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much to test out and see if I liked it. As with a bunch of the gear, one of the things too is if, I don't put stuff on the channel just to talk about it. Like, I only really talk about stuff that I use all the time. And that's because I don't want to, be out there doing a sales pitch. I want to talk to you about the things that I use and how I use them and why. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So yes, these guys did send this over, but they have no idea that I'm even doing this because I told them if I didn't like it, it would just disappear. You'd never see it. But obviously, if you're seeing it and if it's made its way into my traveling case, then that's definitely says something about how much I like it. So that will be, that's a little bit of a spoiler of what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about how I'm using it with other drums and percussion. We'll talk a little bit about how I'm sequencing stuff with the Oxy in order to get, have some different ways to sequence drums live in order to help them not kind of make just a cluster of a mess in a live performance so that you can kind of keep them organized. And then we'll also talk about how I'm routing everything with the Xcelon mixer, because I did get quite a few questions because the Bohm requires some special routing, and I wanted to explain how and why I'm routing this the way I am. So that's what we're going to be talking about. If you're interested in it, if you want to learn something about drums and percussion as far as live performance, modular, any of these modules, that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, glad to have you. Let's see, what do we got going here? Argentina, sweet. Berlin, Argentina times 2. That's awesome. 2 Iceland and 2 Argentina and 2 Netherlands. And I think 2 Berlin. So sweet. And Mexico. Hey, Erica. Welcome from Mexico. Yeah. So let's, I'll just put this back on again in case you didn't hear from the start. I'll just bring up what I have playing right here, and then we'll walk through a little bit about what it is and how and why I'm using it this way. So. Right now, what you hear playing is 3 modules. So you have the Bohm kind of kick system, which I count as one module because it's one power supply with a couple of expanders. You have a secondary kick, which is the Shakmat Battering Ram, and then you have a hi-hat, which is the Shakmat Archer's Rig. And that's all you're hearing right now, right? That's everything here. So just from those 3 modules, you can get a lot going because of specifically what they do and how they work. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the Bohm. Bring this down here. So what is the Bohm? So the central piece of it is a kick drum. So this 18 HP right here in the middle, and I'm going to switch views so you can see this a little better. So this 18 HP right here in the middle, that's the kick drum. So you have a lot of different parameters for whichever kick algorithm you're using. You have a bunch of different kick algorithms that we'll go through a little bit later on. I'll show you a little bit about what they sound like and how they're different from one another. Then there's 2 kind of peripheral modules. And one thing that I've already gotten a bunch of questions about, so I wanted to answer right away. These 2 run off of this one. So they can't be used alone. They're not standalone modules. They're expanders of the initial kick module. So a lot of the processing and what it's doing, digitally and computing wise is going in, it's all going on inside the Bohm, and then it's going out to controls on the outside of it. So no, these cannot be used standalone. without the kick drum. So it's one of those things where you need the kick first, and then you can do with the you can add in the expanders for different things. So what are the expanders that we have here? So let's just go for the one over here on the right side is called the Groove, and the one here on the left is called the Performer. And they both kind of do different things. The Groove is basically like a rumble module. So let's start off with just the kick itself, and hear what that sounds like. Turn it down just a little bit so I can talk over it. Okay, so this is just the kick module by itself. Okay, you have length, sustain, so you can make it a tight kick. You can stretch things out. You have pitch, obviously, however you want to use that. You have a curve, which is the curve of the envelope for the initial kind of attack. You have color, which adds, depending on the algorithm, does different things. So this one, as it gets lowered, adds this kind of sub growl the farther down you get, and then as you go up, it gives you some more on the high end, right? So you can kind of find the spot in there that you like. Then you have effects. The effects can be assigned here. In this case, the effect that I decided to use was, I believe it was saturation on this one. It's basically a tube saturator. The other one that I really like, which I can switch this to really quick, is the soft clip. So this one, if you take this off, you get a cleaner sounding kick, and you can kind of saturate it, which is pretty cool with that soft clipping. So it gives it kind of a really interesting sound as well. Then you have some control over the attack. So obviously you can take the attack off. You can, I'm gonna lower down the decay a little bit here. So you can really make it super punchy as far as the attack goes, or lower that down. And then you have the transient decay and the transient tone. So of that initial hit in the tone. So a lot of flexibility, and this is just one of the algorithms. So obviously tons of possibilities here just within one algorithm, and we'll go through a bunch of the others so you can kind of hear how they sound and how they work as we kind of go through all of this. So then once you have your kick, we'll tighten this up so you can kind of, you're not hearing. Okay, shorten that up. So you've got kind of a short, tight, punchy kick here. Now we can add in this groove module. Originally, when I got this, I thought this was a 3-tap delay, and the delay was delaying the signal of the kick, but it's actually a second kick that's taking the kick from the algorithm that's in there. And these are 3 separate volumes for the different positions of when that kick hits, and they're clocked. So for example, turn these all down, and I will, we're just gonna hear just the kind of transient click part of that right now. So if I bring this up, and I bring up the first of the taps, you hear this is just kind of that kind of slap back sounding initial hit. Then if you bring up the second tap, and then if you bring up the third, and if you bring up this full, you can hear that it's basically 16th notes, okay, going across. But because you've got volume control over the individual ones, you can change the volume of these to get different patterns. Now we also have the ability to pitch this, and we've got some length here, so we can extend it, or you can shorten it and make it really super tight and punchy. We also have effects here, which I have this effect set up, I believe, as a filter. Let me see. Yes, low pass filter. So this one, I can low pass this. So all of this is just the taps, right? So it's kind of like what it would be if you delayed just the transient. Now this button right here, this knob right here, is it's called color. And what this does is it sweeps through 4 different types of kind of rumble effects. This one that we have it on right now is just the tap, so it's just the transient. As you start to turn this, it will blend in with the reverb. And that kind of pumping effect that you're getting is coming from where the taps are assigned, because I don't have anything on the second tap. So if I was to bring the first one down and the second one up, and then the third one down, or the third one back up again, right? And then you can blend these together with those transient hits if you want something rhythmical, or you can blend the transient hits totally out and have it just be reverb off of the second version of that kick. Then if you start to sweep it down even farther, it goes from a reverb to white noise, which doesn't sound great like this, but as soon as you filter this down, and you can pitch it as you like. And then the last one, this filters down from the white noise down to basically a sub. So depending on the quality of what you're listening to this on, headphone wise or speakers, you may or may not hear this. When I was listening at first with some little speakers, I thought there was nothing down here, and I was like, oh, is there something wrong with this? Then what was interesting is as soon as I pitched it up, it starts to appear. So you can hear that low kind of sub pulse. And what's interesting too is even when you can't hear this, I could register this on my level of my output. So it was making it peak. It was actually making it clip because it was so loud, but I couldn't hear it, which is a great little lesson for people about low end and making your low end, cleaning up your low end so that you can make sure that it allows you to make your volume louder of your overall mix. This was driving a huge amount of volume into my low end, but I wasn't hearing any of it because it was subsonic. So being able to change that and make it so that you can hear it, or at least adjust these down or adjust down the master level of this, you won't hear it in this environment, but on a club system with huge subs that can go down to, sub 30 hertz, you'll be able to hear that. You probably won't be able to hear it unless you have really, really good headphones or really good speakers, right? But then we can start to sweep back up again from there, back into the white noise, back into the reverb, and then back into the transient clicks. And again, we can filter this up and find that spot that we like. And we have control over the length of it as well. So we can clean it up and make it really tight so that it fits into whatever kind of length we have for the transient. And pitch. And again, that pitch of having the pitch on the rumble and the pitch on the kick is going to be really super handy when you get this into a club and you need to listen to it on a really big system. And it may not sound at all like what it sounded like in your home studio. Then when you go to play it there, you can make adjustments here with things like pitch and the filter in order to make it sound much better on that system. So that's a really important piece of this. So that's kind of the overview of this really quickly. We'll talk a little bit more about the specific algorithms in a minute, but that's our kick and rumble bit, okay? And the rumble has its own level, so I can adjust this down. Or I can make it be really predominant. So you can set its own level here. It does have a separate output here, which I haven't rigged up yet. So as soon as I do, I'll pop back on and let you guys know. I think I can just take the taps out from here into their own channel and have some more level control over that, which would be great for processing. But in the meantime, I don't really need it. It already sounds pretty solid. Okay, so then we get over here to the performer side of things. Okay, now with the performer, we've got two things. We have an effect and we have a ducking. So we'll talk in a minute about how I have this wired and routed audio-wise, but basically the whole main is going through this unit so that I can take advantage of this ducking. The ducking is clocked from here, so you can get it to duck based on whatever your tempo is here, as well as it's connected to the kick drum as well. So what I can do is if I bring in another instrument, you can hear that there's a broad sound to that. Now I have the ability, oops, spiking my level here, sorry about that. So I have the ability to use this effect, which I have set up here as a DJ style filter that only affects the kick, not the master mix. So if I turn this on and filter this up, I can filter out the kick and rumble while still leaving the rest of the mix whole. So you can put the emphasis on a particular part of your mix and a particular sound, and then you can bring your kick back in with this as well. It has a kill switch, which is really nice, right? So let's filter this up for a second. So I can filter the kick totally out. Now the ducking is going to impact this whether or not the kick is there. So if I start to increase the ducking, so I can set this with like a really dramatic kind of pump if I want it to, and then I can bring the kick back down and bring it in. So you can keep that kind of sidechain ducking effect on your mix. And again, you have control over this, so you can make it really dramatic, or you can bring it down and make it super light so that it just ducks things out of the way of the kick. So you're not really getting like the sidechain pumping, but you're getting the sidechain to the kick, so the kick really punches through in a mix while you're listening to it. So yeah, so being able to have that is pretty sweet. Now, again, it's there whether or not there's the kick, which is really super handy because you can have it or not have it and then bring the kick back. So it's not like if you were to take your kick, if you were to drop your kick out for a break in a track, all of a sudden everything wouldn't just start coming through without that compression on it. This way it's still going to be all together, okay? So that's the first part of this, okay? That's our first kind of kick, rumble, and the overview of the Bohm. And we'll go again through a bit more of that a bit later on, through some more of the algorithms, so you can get a chance to hear what those sound like. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of drum sequencing and drum kind of structure and organization when I perform. So I like to keep all of my drums in the Oxy One. I like to keep them all on a multi-track, so I can see visually how they interact with one another before I bring anything in, because I'm not cueing anything as I'm writing stuff live on stage. So I kind of need some clues, whether it's knob position, whether it's kind of sequencer visuals, things that give me some clues about how things relate to one another. And so this multi-channel view, this multi-track view is really handy for that in the Oxy One. So here, this is my drums and percussion. The bottom line is the kick that's going to the Bohm. Track 7, which is the next one up, is a secondary kick, which is going to the battering ram. The next one up is a hi-hat, which is going to the archer's rig. And the next one up is a percussion element that's going to the Perkons Voice right here. So that way these all kind of work together to create these kind of drum percussion grooves. So just to give a little bit of an example, so if we bring back up our kick, our primary kick with our rumble, okay, that kind of helps to fill out the low end, but it also gives us a bunch of punch and power to the kick. But if I wanted to add some more groove to that, what I was doing previously when I was using a single kick instead of two kicks, is I would go into, so if I was on the kick track, I would go into the velocity and I would add in some lower velocity hits so it would sound like those kind of ghost notes, like secondary kicks. Now I have the option to do those on a second channel, and I'll actually make this so that it's like the same length. So they're both 8 steps. Then I have control, complete control, including effects, pitch, changing, velocity, attack, all of that stuff on this secondary kick. So I can get those to go in together instead of having to just go in and do something through velocity. And this allows me to see still how they interact one with another. So I can see my 2 regular kick hits here, and then my kind of ghost kicks here, giving me something that's more, that gives it a little bit more of a groove. I can also make sure with this that the 2 kicks aren't hitting on the same step, so they won't clash frequency-wise and potentially cancel each other out with phase cancellation or overload the system and cause things to clip. So it gives me a way to kind of make sure that they don't mess each other up. Then we have above that a 4-step pattern with the hi-hat, which is the Archer's rig. And as I mentioned before, with the Oxy, sometimes I will go into the velocity, and you see that I've got different velocities here, so maybe I do. And this way I can keep the emphasis on the off beat, on the up, so it helps make the groove a bit bouncier, where if I didn't have that, it loses a bit of the bounce. And as soon as you add in that, it acts kind of like an offbeat, different hat, but without having to do a different hat, it's just doing it through velocity. So, and then the last element here is the Perkons Voice. So here I have it with, I can't even remember what I had it set on, but what I can do with this here is I can take this and I can look and see that it doesn't hit with other elements that are in the same kind of frequency range, right? So that way when I bring it in, and if I was to change this up to, like, let's say, so something that's also a low tom, this way it's not hitting at the same time as the secondary kick, so it allows everything to stay out of each other's way. And all of this while keeping that same pulse from the initial kick. Now, the other cool thing, having all of this go through the kick and through the performer module, if I bring up the ducking on this module, it makes sure to duck all of those things out of the way of the kick here. So it gives it still a nice groove, and it makes the kick really punch through. And then when you're using a kick synth like this, instead of just a sample, you have a lot more control over the sound of it itself. So if this isn't punching through enough for you, you can always add more attack. You can also saturate a bit more. That can help with the sound. So you can hear there's a lot of things you can do sound design wise without turning up the volume that make it sound louder in the mix. Just depending on kind of the sound that you're looking for. So you see it's pretty easy to kind of shift around with different grooves. And again, with something like the hi-hat, So maybe I have this right now on just an offbeat hat, but if I was to go into the velocity, I can just as easily, and then I've got a groovy 16th note hat just by adding in a couple of steps because I've kept it short to just 4 steps, right? So pretty easy to mess around with that one. Same thing with our cool little sound over here. And again, because it's on a short number of steps, then we get a little bit of a send effect, send it through a reverb. Now, I showed you before that I can filter out just the kick, right? So it's just filtering out the Bohm module and letting everything else come through at its own level. And then you can bring it back in with the kill switch. Now, that's cool, being able to filter out just this. You can also set it up to filter the whole mix, but I like to be able to keep that option separate. So I still have it going through the Oxymeta, which allows me to filter my whole mix. So this can high pass everything, including the kick, but also all of those other elements. And then you can drop that back in as well. So being able to do So it gives you a lot of different options for different ways that you can play around with this live. The other thing that's cool here too is because the mix is going through the Bohm and then out, this master volume for the Bohm frees up a fader here. So I can still keep this fader for my secondary kick, for my battering ram. And this is the fader just for the everything that's going on in the Bohm. So that's without the Bohm, right? So I can take everything out that way. The only thing that's going through is, because I have the set to pre-fader, is the echo coming out of the Perkons Voice. So I can take that out. So anyway, that's kind of how those work and how the sequencing bit of it works. Real quick, I'll go through the routing and then we'll go for some questions. So if you have any questions, pop those into the chat and I'm happy to answer about whatever. So basically what's happening is everything comes into the Xcelon mixer, so including the black box. So externally that comes in here. All of these are connected together, the different expanders, and then they go out through a main out, which is coming out right here, stereo, and that's going into the in on the Bohm performer. Then that passes through the Bohm and it comes from the out of the Bohm performer, and that goes to the in of the Oxymeta, and then it goes from the out of the Oxymeta up to, let me switch views so you can see here, up to the Libre Legio from Noise Engineering, which gives me saturation and limiting, and it does compression, but I'm not really using a compressor. So saturation and limiting, and then that goes from there into the Boredbrain monitor, which makes everything go as a line output, and then I have 1/4 inch outputs coming out of that, and those go out to the house if I'm playing a show, out to the main. Right now it's going into my studio mixer so that you guys can hear what's going on here. But yeah, so that goes out from there. So it took a minute to kind of figure out the way that I wanted to make this be routed, because I wanted to take advantage of the side chain, but I also wanted to be able to filter everything or just filter out the kicks separately. And then I also wanted to make sure that after any of those kind of different effects things, I pass through my saturation and limiting. So that kind of beefs everything up, keeps things from clipping, because the limiter will stop those things hard, and then go out from that into the monitor. So it kind of had to go through this way in order for me to get kind of the functionality that I wanted. So, you know, there's a lot of other ways that you could route this. I could have had this coming into a separate channel and, you know, not take advantage of the master ducking. I could have had it go straight from that into saturation and out, and then just used the filter that's in the Bohm, and have it sometimes be just the kick, but I'd have to go into the menu during a performance and change those things up, and I just didn't want to have to think about that. So I preferred to be able to have it set up this way. So I can use it, I can have the one here is always only the kick, and the one here is always the full mix. And so that way, whatever I get as an idea while I'm playing the show, I can just reach for that thing, and that's what we go for. So yeah, so that's that. As far as this drums and percussion, the setup, the routing with the Bohm, how it works, and all that stuff. So let's do some questions. If you have any questions, pop those in the chat, and then we'll go back through a little bit more of some of the algorithms on the Bohm and what those sound like, and then we can talk a little bit more about the other voices that are up here, that I'm using for my regular voices, for other stuff that is not drums and percussion. So let's see here. Do you need a cue channel for previewing when improvising? I'm currently practicing live techno with a friend, and he thinks previewing is important. So when I first started out, I was using a different mixer. I was using the WMD Performance Mixer, which I still have over here in my studio rig. And one of the reasons why I got it is because it had a cue out. And coming from the DJ world, I was like, oh yeah, I want to definitely be able to cue. Then I realized very quickly that being able to cue in live performance, for me personally, was not something that I wanted to do. And I'll tell you why. When you're DJing and you put on your headphones and you're going to cue up the next track, the track that's playing that you're not listening to, it has dynamics built into it, right? So it has buildups and breakdowns and effects and, you know, hands in the air moments and whatever, depending on the kind of DJ you're doing. So it's all doing those things all by itself while you're in a separate world in your headphones thinking about the next thing. When I'm improvising live, if I'm not doing the thing, it's not happening. And so as soon as I would put on the headphones, I disconnect from the party, I disconnect from what's playing. And so I'm not thinking about how long that hi-hat's been going, or does that thing sound weird, or did this thing just drift out of key, or did this, you know, MIDI clock start to go weird. I'm not listening to any of that because I'm thinking about my other thing. I'm somewhere else writing. Then I would come back in, and I'm coming in cold. I don't know if the timing is right to make a change, to do a breakdown, to change up something, to modulate something, because I haven't been listening. And so for me, I don't cue at all. I prefer to write cold, write using other cues other than audio cues, and then bring things in and adjust them live in front of the crowd. Because for me, that separation from the crowd really hindered the performances. And so, yeah, I pretty quickly moved away from cueing when I play live. And all my sets are totally improvised. So I'm not cueing, I'm not playing something just because I pre-prepared it. I'm not pre-preparing anything at all. I'm writing everything live, but I'm writing it all live, like not in my headphones and then bringing it in. So I don't know if that helps. It's not for everybody, but for me personally, I found that was important. Let's see here. Not sure who you're asking regarding Q channel, but I'm repeating Q mixer and I'm too lazy to use it. I also watch that interviews Surgeon and Blauan don't bother either. Yeah, exactly. Like if you ever watch Blauan perform, he's looping. So he's writing something live, recording it into a looper, writing something new, recording that into another looper channel. And so he's just constantly going over. Surgeon doesn't cue either because, again, there's kind of a philosophical thing about this too, as far as your live performance goes. The idea of my live performance is that it's one performance. It's not a series of tracks. And so because of that, I'm not making a new track and then transitioning to it. I'm morphing throughout the entire night and bringing in elements and out elements to make different moods and different tracks if you want. But there isn't like a moment where I switch from track A to track B. And I think that's very much the style of like Blauman and Surgeon. I think they're doing something very similar. So let's see here. That was jamming with a group by Q. Yeah, I think so too. Like if you're gonna play kind of back to back, that type of performance, then you're gonna want to prepare something that you're gonna bring in. But when it's just you have a lot more freedom to be able to adjust once the thing's in. Let's see here. Collecting options. Cool. Hey, from Bavaria. Hello, hello. Welcome from Bavaria. That rumble sounds nice, doesn't it? I think it sounds great. I was very happy when I got it. Furniture, what's going on? I'll just join. Hope everyone's having a great weekend. I am. Are you? From your experience, what kinds of percussion sounds does the Perkons Voice do best? Boy, that's a great one because there's so many sounds that the Perkons Voice does. I think there's 13 algorithms on each. There's 13 algorithms that you can do, and each one of them has different parameters that you can adjust. And so, man, I mean, like just to go through, like if we were to play, so this is like a Car Plus strong synth engine, but if we go into the patches, like these are the patches that come with it. So that's a kick, other kicks. Snares, more snares. Toms. I love to use it for toms actually. You could do tonal stuff as well. These weird kind of bizarro electronic sounds. It's kind of a bass engine, but it does a lot of different stuff. And then you've got all your cymbals. I'll skip over a few. So it kind of does a little bit of everything. Right, so tons of different options. So it's really hard to say what it does best. It does its own stuff. I will say one thing. When I got this, I was thinking like, I had a Perkons previously, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I got all these great Perkons sounds that I'll use in my case, just in one thing. I don't use any of the sounds that I was using in the full-size Perkons with this module, because there's something about the way it's set up as far as the parameters and just kind of the way the workflow that pulls you in a different direction. So I use it for a lot of kind of like, you know, I'll use tom sounds. So you can do like low bass and stuff like that. I find myself using these types of sounds a lot. So you can get like weird type of background sounds, then you can add some effects to it. And it creates these like super cool atmospheres. You still have the pumping going. So you can see the variety of stuff that you can do with the Perkons Voice is huge. So for me, it's not just a percussion voice, but it lends itself to percussive style sounds, so like tonal percussion. So you hear that these are all pitched, right? So there's tone that's coming out of those, and I find that it really shines with that. So to use things that will give you a pitch or a tone, like a lead or something, but that is something that has a very percussive core, right? That's going to add to the rhythmic percussion of what you're playing. So that's one of the reasons why I love it. It's quickly becoming one of my favorite modules. I really, really love it. Let's see what else. Hey, from Australia. Welcome all the way from the other side. How does the limiter work? Is it just the sum? Yeah, so it's a master limiter. So it's limiting on the master of everything that's coming out all the way through the whole mix is being summed, and then it's going out into one stereo module, and there's a single knob limiter, which is giving you, it's maximizing volume as it limits, as it goes up. So it kind of turns things up while it limits, and so it's decreasing the dynamic range as it's pressing up. So that's why having it kind of lightly on is great. It works really, really well. And then there's a saturator there as well, so you can get a whole bunch of perceived volume, perceived loudness from the saturation, and then you combine that with the limiter, and it's an amazing, very small solution for end of chain. So very cool. Is the master going through the Bohm I missed? Yeah, so it's basically the master goes out from the mixer into the Bohm, out of the Bohm into the Oxy, out of the Oxy into the Libre Legio, out of that into the monitor and out. All right, let's see here. Hey, what's up, Christopher? Good to see you as well. Any opinions on the Nobula Monumatic module? Yeah, I have an opinion that I want it. It sounds great. I actually have the Polycinematic in my case right now, which will switch over here. I have the Polycinematic right here, and actually in my, I have a modular grid. I'm kind of working out my next case because I'm going to be getting a new case pretty soon. And one of the modules that I already had put in there, even though I don't have it yet, is the Monumatic. I'm hoping to get my hands on one. I would love to try it out because I messed around with it at Super Booth and it sounded phenomenal. So I would really love to put that in place of the Polycinematic. So I may. I think it's very cool. Let's see, just what I needed to hear. Good. Working on putting together a live performance rig. Sweet. Wow, the Perkons Voice sounds good, but don't see any electrons there. Aren't they part of your live setup anymore? Actually, right now, at the current moment, I don't have any electron devices in my live setup. Now, they're still here in the room. I still have behind me over there a rack with all like groove boxes and stuff. But what I was really trying to do over the last couple months is reduce down my setup even further for travel. And I had this full-size case plus the Analog Heat Plus effects plus the Digitact. Prior to that, I also had the Digatone as well, and it was just too much. It was just not, it was a bit overkill, and it was also a lot to carry because this big case already becomes my carry-on. So then everything else has to fit into a backpack, and sometimes it wouldn't, and I didn't want to check things in my bag and then not have a piece of gear show up to a show. So I was trying to reduce down, and the first thing I reduced was I took out the Digatone because I just have so many voices already in my case that I didn't need it, as great as it sounds and as much as I love it. The Digitact was the next to go because I found that I was using it mostly for drums and percussion, which, as you can hear, I kind of have covered here. And what I don't have here, I'm using loops from the black box. So basically the way the black box is set up is that it is, before I play a show, I'll just launch all of the things that I have going here, and I have kind of a convention where everything is always similar in its location. So everything's just playing there, looping in the background, and then I can bring up those sounds. So for example, if I wanted to bring in a 16th hat, I can bring that in here rather than bringing it in on the Digitact. Or if I wanted to bring in like a clap, I think I have a fill here. Yeah, so like I can bring in something like that here. Atmospheres as well. I was doing those in the Digitact, so I can bring in like the kind of background atmosphere sound, which I can do here. And then I have a few other little percussion things. which are things that can be used in combination with one another. And that's all in one preset of 16 loops. Then in here, I have a whole bunch of presets of 16 loops. So if I have used up kind of the sounds there, I want something a little different, I can just load another preset, and I've got them in kind of similar positions on here so I know where they are, and then I can use those. So because of that, I didn't need to have the Digitact with everything being sequenced by every step. If I want to sequence something live, as I showed you before, I'll do that using the Oxy with the drum and percussion modules that I have in the case. So because of all that, and then also the last part was adding in the Librelegio. Because it has saturation and limiting, it allowed me to take out the analog heat plus effects as an end of chain. The only thing I'm missing still is a bass mono. And in my new case, I'm gonna have a little more space, and I may add in the Endorphins Golden Master, just because you can mono the bass frequencies in that, and that's kind of important for me on the master. So then I'll have all the things that I needed on the master that I was using the analog heat plus effects for. So I have saturation, limiting, and bass mono, and I'll be good to go. So yeah, so I pulled those all out. I still have them, but they're not part of my traveling setup. As you guys have seen, I have a lot of stuff in here that doesn't travel with me, but what I like to show here on these streams is the stuff that I'm using to travel with. So anyway, that's where the electrons are. Hey from the Netherlands, welcome. Greetings from Austria. Awesome, awesome. Awesome, awesome. Let's see. Thank you for your answers, helps me a lot. I'm glad. That's what I do this for. Let's see. Using velocity, do your modules respect trigger strength, or how else is velocity manifesting? So when I'm using velocity, it's because, and that's really only with drums and percussion, because in most of the voices, I don't use pitch CV with drums and percussion voices. I'm just using a trigger or gate. So instead of having a pitch CV, I changed that to a velocity CV. So it's coming out of the Oxy as as a velocity, and then it's being patched into the velocity input in the module. So like in the battering ram, the CV and gate are gate and velocity rather than pitch. And so that way I can put those in. Whereas the Perkons Voice, it's gate and pitch instead of velocity. So I don't have that there. So it depends on the type of voice I'm using, I guess. If it's a truly percussive voice, I'm not sequencing pitch. And so with those, I'd rather sequence velocity, just because it's way more useful for me for a live set. Okay. Let's see, I've always wanted to ask this of someone who's traveled by plane with their equipment. Any weird reactions from border security when taking your gear as carry-on? So funny you asked that. But I've had a lot of like really good experiences recently. The last, I don't know, at least 4 times that I've flown out of Denver going somewhere, when I go through security, my bag always gets flagged for like the secondary screening, because it goes through and it looks weird with this folded up modular with everything patched and cables and whatever. So it gets flagged to go to the secondary. All of the last 4 times at least, once it got there, they didn't even open the bag, because the guy looked at the screen and recognized what it was. All 4 times, 4 different people, they were all music producers, music people, like that they did for fun besides being TSA agents, security agents. So like I've had people look at that and go like, oh, you're going to play a show? Or, oh, modular? Or, oh, you a producer? And they ask like questions like that, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm on my way to play a show right now. Okay, cool, see ya. And they don't even open the bag. Now, that had happened to me for quite a while. And then this last time that I went to Berlin a couple weeks ago to play a show, when I was coming back, when I was leaving Berlin, I went through security. And as I was going through, I did like the thing where you stand there and they scan you. Went through and they flagged me for secondary screening. So then they gave me like the pat down, took off my shoes, made my shoes go back through the machine for some reason. And then that worked out fine. Then when I went to get my bags, my backpack got flagged because I had other stuff in there, like my like a controller and some cables and stuff. So that got flagged, and they opened that one up and went through it. And my modular got flagged, and they opened that one up, and I had to open up the case, and they were like, "Oh, it's modular." Okay, so then I closed it down, and I was able to go. But so this time, everything got stopped. And that was the first time in a while. Like it gets flagged all the time, but it usually doesn't get stopped. So that was interesting. It was interesting to say the least. So let's see. What do we have here? That Noisite drop is just begging for a little sneak peek demo. Well, you saw a little sneak peek demo of it. Yeah, it's this hasn't been released yet, and I mean everybody knows that it's coming out. And so, in speaking with Thomas at Noisite, he said that he was fine with it showing up in videos, but we're not going to do like big walkthrough videos of it yet. But I can tell you that I'm loving it. It's really cool. It's very deep as far as getting it set up and kind of configured exactly the way you want to use it, and you can already see that it's going to be something that's really, really super useful. But right now I'm kind of using it in its most simple form, which is just to control the black box. I'm actually in the process, I haven't finished this yet, I'm in the process of getting everything mapped to the Oxy Choral so that I can have 8 channels that can control all 8 of the voices inside the choral independently with hardware. So I don't have to go in and change and switch and go to a different thing and control the next thing and go to the next thing. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that. I just need to get that all set up. But the black box is now, it's kind of operating right now the same way a Launch Control XL that I was using before would operate. So I've got like tracks 1 through 8 are volume faders 1 through 8. Then the next knob up is a tuning for each one of those tracks. The next up is the volume for 9 through 16, and then tuning for 9 through 16. And then this top row isn't doing anything yet. So very, very simple setup so far, but yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's super, super built. Like it's got a metal frame and it's heavy and it's like, it's a tank. It's not like some little like flimsy piece of plastic. So very cool. But the way you set it up is very deep. I don't know, I haven't talked a lot about, but I have also the Noisite Warp module here. And this has kind of a workflow there's a similarity in workflow between the two, which is there's basically 2 different, zones where you would operate. One is kind of a studio zone, like a setup zone, and then the other one is kind of a performance zone, because Thomas, who makes these, is a live performer. So they're super, super deep. This is amazingly deep for sound design and creating sounds and additive synthesis and FM and you know, regular traditional subtractive synthesis and wavetable and all these things that you can do for creating really amazing sounds, like really amazing. Deep, takes a long time. You'll spend hours in there tweaking and making stuff. But then once you make them, you kind of set them up in this galaxy here, which is like you move these things around so that you can kind of move things to different places. And this allows you to go between all of the sounds that you've made. So then you go into kind of performance mode and you're going to move around and go into those different areas and use these macro knobs to be able to control things in the performance without needing to go into any menus or anything like that. So you set it up and you take a bunch of time to set it up. And then once you set it up, you put it into a mode where it's very easy to operate that thing you've taken all those hours to make. Kind of like an Octatrack, right? Octatracks take forever to set up, but then once you've got the setup, they're really easy and super playable when you're on stage. The drop is very similar. So what I'm seeing with it is there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of detail. You can really have fine control over all these different things within it. And then once you're done, you kind of go out of that setup mode and you're just in performance mode. And then you're just going from preset to preset, however you set things up, and using the knobs the way you want them to. So it's very cool. It's very smart because most places can't, most companies can't find that balance between depth of features and ease and immediacy of workflow. I think Electron does a great job of that, and they're one of the few, right? In most companies, it's either super deep, that it's super menu diving, the workflow's clunky, or the workflow's really super streamlined, but you're really limited in what it can do. And so I think Thomas has come up with a great way to find the best of both worlds, very much like the Octatrack, where you have all of the depth, but you don't need it once it's set up. And then you've got this really good, playable, like performance-oriented workflow. So yeah, he's done a great job with that in both of these. I haven't used his effects module, but I'm assuming it's the same. You can kind of see the way his head works, which is pretty cool. So anyway, that's it about the drop. What else? So whole row just of percussion and drums now. Yeah, so this is all drums and percussion with the exception of the Erica Synths dual effects here in the middle. This is just an effect send. So just a master effect so that I can do delay or reverb or both, just some basic effects in there. Everything else is drums and percussion in this row. So, yep. What else? Did I already talk about the drop? Yes, I just did. That case is the Explorer. No, this case is the Morph Modular. But it is, let me see. I just had this pulled up. One sec. So the Explorer is the new one. They don't have the old name. So this was the original one that they were selling. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. This was a prototype for the new Explorer. So, but it was kind of closer to the original case that they were doing. So this one is, this is a 6U, 12U 84 HP version of their case. The new one is going to be 14 U's. So there's a 1U row in each. There's an 84 and a 104. I'm going to be getting the 14U 104, or sorry, 14U 84, which I'm very excited about. And so that way, everything's kind of the same except for it's 1U row wider or deeper this way. And then it has a whole bunch of new functionality. There's, 1/4 inch outputs. There's, different ways that you can connect it to different things. You've got different holes that are flexible in the outside that you can change to be either, USBs for, power or lights, or you can make them be, XLRs out, or you can make it be RCAs out, or like whatever kind of outputs you want, you can make those be that, which is very, very cool. And then, they've got a bunch of internal connections, so you can use I think you can use the Bafaco and the IntelliGel output modules, the ones that connect to those cases. I think they connect also to the Morph Modular, so you can use that for the outputs. You can also use those 1/4 inch as inputs. So if you have a module that can translate something to input, you can bring in outside gear, have it come into your rack and do stuff, and all that's kind of built into the case, which is really cool. It also has new screws on the hinges, which you can undo with your hands, kind of like knurlies, and you can take those out and lay the top piece flat. So if you're playing a live show and you don't want to have the case between you and the audience, you can lay it flat and have everything laid out so the crowd can see everything. And then it's really easy to flip it up and put those screws back in, and then you take it off like normal. So a lot of different, features that they added in. They changed up the switches, added in, they made the finish slightly different on the outside, whole bunch of stuff. I mean, it's fantastic. I saw it at Super Booth, and really, really, really cool case. So I'm very much looking forward to mine. You'll see it soon, hopefully. Hopefully. Let's see, what else? Any idea if the Erica Synths baseline Eurorack module is essentially the same as their DB01 baseline tabletop? It is very similar. I don't know if it's exactly the same. You'd have to go in and check out specs, but it's very, very similar to the desktop model. It's yeah, I've never had the desktop one, but I've played around with them a bunch with other friends of mine that have had them. So I think they're similar, but I'm not 100% certain. I have kind of this love-hate relationship, and I'm in a love phase right now with the baseline because I found some new cool stuff that it does. I didn't play this when we were playing the stuff before, but if you go, it's got 3 different waveform outputs. So this is the sawtooth. Then you can go to the square. And as you take the cutoff up, you can hear square, sawtooth, and then triangle. And right now I have the sub-oscillator engaged. If you take the sub-oscillator off, that's triangle, sawtooth, square. And again, if you turn the resonance down, it can sound more like a normal bass. But then if you turn up the sub-oscillator, it gets you a ton of beef in the low end. And then you also have the detune, which beefs it up as well. So you can hear it's beefy. Now, if you take off the sub-oscillator and you switch to the sawtooth, then you can detune and make a super saw or like a respace. So you can hear, you get a lot of variety. And you can go like super acidy. Right? So a lot of different flexibility. So it's actually a really great module. I wasn't using it very well, and I think that's where those were the moments that I wasn't getting along with it, was when I wasn't doing a good job of using it. Now that I know my way around it, it's yeah, I love it. It's very, very cool module. So let's see. Love the motto badge on your modular. Oh, this one? Yeah, me too. Let's see, I have the desktop and I love it. Not the most versatile synth, although I think it sounds great, especially with the detune, but along with the sequencer, it's very cool. Yeah, it's, I love it. And it's, I think I was in your same thing. I thought that it wasn't very versatile, and it's because I wasn't using it right. Now that I've spent some time really exploring it and really getting to know it, I really feel like it's a lot better than I thought it was at the beginning, and I think it's a great module. It's really flexible for bass for what it's doing, for the amount of space it takes up. So yeah, I'm totally loving it for sure. All right, let's see, coming late, we'll wait to watch the beginning. I guess you already talked about the Bohm. I did, but I was gonna go back into some of the algorithms because we did not talk about algorithms, which I think is an important part of the Bohm. So let's listen to some kicks, right? Why not? Do we want it with? Right? So we've got some reverb, a reverb kind of rumble. Can add some percussion into that. So yeah, or we'll just take that out. Let's take that out just to go through the algorithms. Let's start off. So this is kind of more of an FM. Right, so you can get a lot of sounds out of this. With the saturation, it really warms it up a lot as well. So you can get a ton of flexibility out of that. So then I'll just leave it right here on these parameters, and we'll just go through some of the different algorithms. What's that one? HZ1. I can't remember. It says in there what they're all modeled after, but. This one is more of an analog one. I haven't played around with this one very much. PX3. This one sounds great. They all do, actually. SP6, VXT. That's it. No, there's one more. WT4. Oh, and another one. XT88. So you can see there's a lot of different algorithms with very different characteristics each one. Let's go back to the PX3. This one I really like a lot. You can get a ton of power out of this one. Also, if you go to the FM one thing you get with this color knob, as you go to the right side, it becomes a little bit just more punchy. As you go to the left side, and all that's just like the main kick without a rumble. Okay, because obviously you have the length here, so you can shorten the length way up and have it just be the punchy part if you're going to add in a rumble. Or you can thicken it up with some length and sustain. Just make it more thumpy and then have your rumble. And again, remember with the rumble, you can pitch that, you can filter it, and then you have these different rumble type sounds. So obviously, just the transient bit, reverb, white noise, and then sub. But then if you go to something like the white noise, the reverb blended with a little of the percussion, and then filter it down. And again, you can adjust the taps in order to be able to change up the rhythm that's on it as well. By adjusting the taps. So you can really make that sound any way you want. And then again, just changing up the other algorithms. We weren't going through the algorithms with the rumble, so now we can go through them with some of the rumbles. This one doesn't really do the rumble well, or this one. That's thick. That's pretty fat. This PX3 and the FM have been my favorite ones. This one for more aggressive stuff. I just think that that's a fat sound, even by itself. And then when you add in the rumble, it's great. You know, and then going over to the, if you want something like, not with the aggression for me personally, but you can get a really fat thud from this one. And it's great too because you've got the adjustment on the rumble, so you can have it be really predominant, like when we're using the, like on the PX3 here, have it be like a huge part of what you're doing, or you can just have it be really light, just to help fill out that low end. So instead of just this, you can just have a little bit there. And again, if you were to bring in something like an atmosphere, it's at a different pitch from there, and then do some ducking. Right? So this is, all you're hearing right now is just the Bohm system and one atmosphere loop. And you've already got a pretty full frequency spectrum, which it's one of those things that's really, it can really be a challenge with live sets, particularly, well, with all live sets, whether it's hardware or modular, it doesn't really matter, is they'll sound loud but thin, meaning that you get a lot of peak volume, but you don't have a lot of perceived loudness, meaning there's not a lot of frequencies in the middle that are like in between the sounds. And one thing that's really cool with the Bohm and the Rumble is it fills up a lot of that low end frequency spectrum. And because you're routing a mix through there, you know, like, and you've got this side chain, then you can add something like that bass that we were listening to before. So even though there's some frequencies that would normally not necessarily play well together, because everything's going through the side chain, even if we did it super light, you still get the punch of that kick coming through. And if you drive up, you can really drive the punch if you want to. And that's without a big transient. And you can still really hear it coming through, even with the rest of this, right? And again, if we were to just filter out just the kick, that's the bass pattern and the atmosphere. And you can hear that punch still comes right through. So it's really interesting because that's a tricky thing to do with very limited processing to get a kick to really punch through when you've got a lot of clutter in the low end. And this is a lot of low end clutter, and it's still punching through because of the ducking and because of the ability to punch through with something that's not in the low frequencies. That transient that's in the mids or the high mids, it's allowing that to punch through and really be that sound, you know. And then if you were to just add in something simple like a hat, and then, as we talked about before, having a secondary kick with something like this is great because now I can turn up my transient on that secondary kick so it can punch through without having to worry about the low end. And anything that's in the low end is going to get filtered out, or it's going to get ducked out using the sidechain. So if I now bring in a secondary kick, and you can hear how that kick is still really punching through because of the quality of the kick itself and because of the ducking. But then you've also got the battering ram really punching through, again, because of the quality of the kick and how good it really sounds in a mix, and the fact that any of the low end is getting ducked out of here. Like if I turn up the low end here, you don't really hear any of that because it's being ducked out. Right? Where if I didn't have this, and I took this off, you hear there's a lot of low end there. And that really kind of moves it right out of the way. so you can really keep this coming through in a really focused way. And this is with kind of a little bit or a medium bit of the rumble. So in this case, if you turn up the rumble, you don't really gain anything because there's already a lot of stuff in the low end. But this is where you would change the color to something percussive. And it's just going to add into that groove. And then you can tune the battering ram up and make it more like a 909 style tom. And that gets you a lot of really interesting stuff with just a bass line, kick that has its rumble built in, secondary kick, and a hi-hat, and the atmosphere. So that gives you a kind of a thick, full sound already. Now, if you start to pull out those elements, just to hear how they're missed, if I was to take out the rumble, put it back in, take it out, take out the atmosphere, things start to thin out a little bit. If I shorten up the battering ram, take out the bass, take out the battering ram, and then take out the hat. So everything you're hearing there is coming just from the kick. Then we can add back in bit by bit. Right, so again, there's only 4 elements here, but you can get a ton of stuff. And this is, just so you know, other than the bass line, this is all just drums and percussion, right? There's not any voices here, right? So if I wanted to make this less bass focused and have this, and I'll bring in something with the pizza. If I take off the ducking, you can get a little bit more of the sustain coming through. But if I put the ducking back in, you really get pump. So then the ducking becomes an element of the groove with the percussion. That kick back down. So it really becomes a secondary kick rather than just a tom. And again, filter the whole mix here. Drop it back. Or filter just you can see, again, very few elements, and you've got something really interesting. Then we're missing stuff kind of in the high mids or the higher frequencies, so I would bring in something like the BIA. Just want to switch this to a higher octave. Yeah, that's fine. some of our ghost effects here. So you see, just because each one of the sounds is really good quality, it means that you don't have to overload with a bunch of different things. You can keep things very simple if you're using things that go well together and you're using them in a way that goes well together. So that's just Bohm with rumble, secondary kick as the battering ram, and the archer's rig as an offbeat hat. And then we've got, again, we can go into the that's everything but the Bohm. And then I'll pull all this out again. And that's just, again, Bohm with the groove and the performer. And you get a lot of opportunity for shaping. Adjusting the rhythm. Right? So lots of cool sounds. All right, what other questions you guys have? If you have other questions, pop them into the chat. Happy to answer questions about any of this stuff, show you how I'm doing any of the stuff that I'm doing or how it's routed, or questions about why I chose what I chose or why I'm running it a certain way. I'm happy to answer it because, you know, maybe you've got another idea. I'm always open for those as well. So let's see. Module sounds sick. Yes, it does. Maybe not as intuitive as the battering ram. I agree. It's not a matter of as intuitive, because it is, the workflow is very intuitive. It's very straightforward. There's just more options. And anytime you have more options, it ends up being tweakier, right? So you have some more flexibility, you can do more stuff with it. But what I love about the battering ram is it's got 4 knobs and you just like, you're there instantly. So you can get some great sounding kicks from the battering ram just by itself. So like if I was using a smaller case and I wanted to have the best possible kick in a small case, I'd just put the battering ram. If I want a whole system of kick with rumble, with multiple algorithms, with a lot of selection, with the sidechain ducking and built-in filter and all that stuff, absolutely the Bohm it's like a totally different device. So that's why for me, I'm really excited to use them together because, you know, this way, the way I'm using it right now, I'm using the Bohm as the primary kick and the battering ram as kind of secondary kick / tom. But because I have them sequenced on separate tracks here, let's say I wanted to switch from doing a kind of a traditional Bohm kick in one section and I wanted to switch to a like a more broken beat, I can switch kicks. So I can go from one kick to another kick. Right? So it's like you've got the opportunity now to do 2 separate kicks, and you can also do like really interesting stuff with the kicks that you have by adding in a secondary kick this way. So it gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom by having 2. You know, it could be overkill to have 2 kicks in your case. I don't think you need 2 kicks in your case. Either one of these by themselves is plenty for a live show, plenty. But having 2 gives you some options because like you saw, the battering ram can now be its own kick. It can be a low tom, a high tom. It can be a secondary kick in conjunction with the Bohm, so they can play off each other. You can pitch them kind of the same. So it's like different velocities and different rhythms coming from slightly different timbres, and it sounds really cool. So it just gives you a lot of freedom in that kind of low end groove, which for the kind of music that I do, that's super important. And so being able to just have like, let's do like a kick with a little rumble, a secondary kick, and then just having those, and then I can use some of the percussion samples that I have over here. So now it's just kicks and hat and then a couple samples. And then this is something that you could dance to while you're doing something else, while you're creating your next thing, your next melody, your next line. So if we were to go in, for example, to our BIA, you've already got a danceable groove underneath, so then you can just start adding in something interesting on top, whether it's an individual element, maybe it's a vocal. We've got a vocal over here. That's an itch. So again, you see, this is just drums and percussion with a very simple melody. And even if I took the melody out and it was just drums and percussion with a vocal. Right, so you can keep it really super simple that way. Or I have a couple of loops in here that are things that I've recorded or some samples that I've downloaded. So you can have something like this. And all of a sudden you've got something that you can groove to while you're writing something else. And that's really handy to be able to have things that can play, keep people dancing, that are groovy enough that they keep the vibe and the energy going while you're doing something else. Right, so now I can come in here and I can do, you know, another, let's just do this way. And then I can bring this in with my BIA. So you can write something really quick while you've got other stuff going. And then this gives you something that can go on for a while you write something else. So let's use, maybe we want to take this one out here. Maybe we've had enough of that sound. Right? So then that's something that you can write and get in there really quick. So each thing can kind of stand on its own. So it takes the pressure off of having to have these 6 things that go together in order to keep people dancing. And then you're like sweating it all the time. Like, what if you mess up one? If I take out everything melodic here, people will still dance to just this. Even if I was to take out all of these percussive elements and have just kick with secondary kick and hat, even if I only had this going for a little while, I can then come in and have, I can turn this into a tom. And because I have this set up now as a secondary kick, I have this plugged into pitch instead of velocity. So that melodic bit, that percussive melodic bit, is coming from the battering ram. And then we can get right back into being that secondary kick. Again, kick, secondary kick, and hat. And then you can bring in something simple, like a single note. If it's on an offbeat. And then let's do a call and response. See, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? When you've got good drums and percussion, the other part doesn't have to be complicated. The idea is that with your drums and percussion, that should be enough to keep people dancing. Just the drums and percussion. They should be groovy and funky and interesting sounding enough, and non-repetitive enough, and sonically interesting enough that it will keep people going just with that. And that takes the pressure off of the other elements that they have to be complicated and interwoven or whatever. That's very difficult to do in an improvised way unless you're playing keys. And so being able to keep the low end, keeping people moving, is a great way to kind of keep everything going without having the pressure of bass line plus lead plus counter melody plus whatever, because that gets really confusing and really difficult to control when you're playing live. So drums and percussion are kind of the foundation of everything, and they kind of drive the bus, right? They're the things that are keeping everything going, is those foundational elements. All right, let's see, questions. Let's see here. Oops, sorry. Combo with the battering ram is excellent. I agree. Do you think the Meta effects module is worth it for studio modular rig rather than just for live? Sure, but that's not really where it shines. I mean, it is a performance effects unit. It's kind of like if you took the performance effects out of a DJ mixer and plugged them in here. So being able to have those kind of dramatic master effects is really what this is for. You know, if you were going to have a studio, if you were going to have a multi-effects to use in your studio, this wouldn't necessarily be the first one I would choose, just because it's what it's really good at, what it really shines at is performance effects. So you could, but I don't know that that's necessarily kind of your best option. It might be, but I don't know. Let's see, is the performer filter as good as the one from the Meta? I mean, they're both good. So yeah, I mean, I guess they both sound great. So I think, again, the way I have it routed is on purpose because I didn't want to do either or. Because if I wanted to have the flexibility with the performance filter to be kick or master mix or both, that's menu diving. And I try to avoid menu diving during performance at all costs. So I want to set this up in a way that I always know the way it is. So I set it up so I've got a high pass, low pass DJ style filter that is just for the kick. If I want to do the entire mix, I'll use the meta rather than this one. And I wouldn't really necessarily want to do just the mix and not the kick. But if I did, in that case, I would probably go into the menu, but I don't see that being that important to me. So for me, it's important to have both for performance options, but either or, I don't know. I mean, it all depends on how you have it routed and how you're going to use it. So, but they're both good. What else? Fantastic. Thanks, Pat Brady. Does the rumble module work independently from the main kick? No. These are basically dead modules. They don't even have power. Everything that's processing for these two modules is happening inside the processor in the Bohm. These are just really the controls for it. So they're connected to the back of the Bohm, and then that's connected to power. So it powers both of these and does all of the processing for these as well. So if you want to change the effect in the effect knob in the performer, you go into the menu of the Bohm. And if you want to change the effect in the groove, you go into the menu in the Bohm. So it controls everything. So you have to have this in order to use the other two. You can use it without the other two or with one or the other, but no matter what, you have to have the main unit. You have to have the main Bohm unit. Let's see. Is it really that much better than the battering ram? I don't know if it's better. I think it's really dramatically different from the battering ram. I think if it all depends on what your gauge of better is. So if better is ease of use combined with quality of sound, the battering ram is better. If you want size and cost, the battering ram is better. If you want the rumble, the performance aspect, the filter that's built in, the ducking, multiple algorithms, deeper control over the individual drums, then the Bohm is better. It's like, it really, I would have a hard time choosing one or the other. If I was going to get one, what would drive my decision wouldn't be, is one better than the other? What would drive my decision is, how much space do I have? Do I need a rumble within the case, or can I use a sample for that? Do I need the ducking, or do I have some other way in my rig to be able to do that? If the answer is I don't need the rumble and I don't need the ducking and it's just kick to kick, then it just comes down to personal preference. Do I want something that's super quick and easy to dial in and sound awesome? Then I would go battering ram. Do I want something that is also easy to sound awesome, but that is much deeper as well, and also nearly twice the price? I would go with the Bohm. So it just really depends. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I will say, from my limited experience over the last couple weeks or last week or so, they play really well together, which is not always an option for everybody, but I will tell you they play really, really, really well together. So what else? Is your entire mix running through the Bohm for ducking? Yes. Master mix into the Bohm, out of the Bohm into the meta for performance effects, out of the meta into my end of chain module, and then out of that and into my output module. Two kicks goes twice as hard. I agree. Setup is fantastic. Thanks. Appreciate that. Sounds totally deep and hypnotic. Cool. Mission accomplished. That's what I was trying to do. Fifth. I don't know what that means. Okay. Do you think the Bohm modules are good for genres other than techno? Yes, absolutely. One thing we didn't really go into at all, one of the modules, or one of the So you've got standard drum, standard kick drum. You've also got, with a lot of these, you can tone everything way down with a lot of these, right? So you're hearing a lot of 4 on the floor kicks here, but I mean, if you wanted to use any of these, I would say it's because of the flexibility of the sound design within this, I would say you could very easily use this for other genres. But it does find its way back to techno pretty easily. And that's without the rumble. Right, so you got a lot that you can do there. So yes, it would work just fine for genres other than techno. I think it is very at home though in the harder driving kick drum driven genres. You know, if you're looking for something to do deep house, I would say this is total overkill. Yes, you could totally do it, but why would you want all of this if what you wanted was a really nice sounding, punchy, kind of analog sounding kick? I would go that route. Find something that sounds good for that. Now, this does have a lot of flexibility, so you could absolutely do that. One thing I didn't mention, you can also save presets in here. So if you set up a certain sound that you really like, you can save that sound, and then you can recall that, which is also pretty cool. What else? I like this a lot. Awesome. I'm glad. Question from higher in the chat. Next question then is, how do you route the output of Bohm? Any effect after it? Yes. Question answered. Good. What's up, James? Welcome. Welcome, welcome. James is a past student of my improvised live performance course, which I will shamelessly pitch right now because I don't do ads and I don't do paid sponsorships of my videos. The only thing that pays for this stuff is my courses. So if you would like to, the August course is still enrolling. It goes live in just a couple days. The first of the calls is on Sunday, a week from today. So yeah, jump in, improvised live performance or hybrid production. And it's a 1-month course. A lot of individual attention, a lot of group Zoom calls, individual feedback, one-on-one lessons. There's like 50 videos you can watch at your own pace, all kinds of stuff. So definitely check it out. It's on sale right now because I was really excited this week. We actually just passed 100 people that have been through my courses. And so as a celebration, I'm actually doing 50% off right now, all of the courses. So just as a thank you to everybody who supported the courses this year. So if you'd like to do it, now's the time to do it. It's the biggest discount I've ever given. So grab it now before the discount goes away, get signed up and take advantage of the discount. And if you can't do it in August, go ahead and sign up now and then just send me a message and let me know what month you want to switch to and I can move you to another month. And that way you can take advantage of the price right now and jump in there and then take it when it's convenient for you. So let's see here. Question about the 1010 black box. Does it need a trigger to start the loop? If yes, how do you set it? So basically there's different ways to set up each sound. So this right up here is where you decide what type of slot you want it to be. Is it a sample? Does it act as a sample, a single, whatever? Clip, slicer, granular. You can do a new recording or a new multi-track sequencer. So I have these set up in clip mode. And when they're in clip mode, that means you just start them by touching it on the touchscreen and then it starts the loop and I have them set to loop. So before I start a show, everything looks like this. It's all stopped. So what I'll do right before I get started is I go through just like this. I launch everything, but you'll notice it hasn't launched yet. And as soon as I hit play on the Oxy, that sends a MIDI start stop to here, and then everything goes together. So you see all of them start, and then they just stay looping in the background throughout my show. And so whenever I need something, I can bring it in. So if I need an atmosphere, I just bring the atmosphere in. If I need hi-hats, I just bring those in. So I have those built there. And I have a whole bunch of different banks like this of different groups of sounds, just so that if I start to get tired of something during a show or whatever, I can always go to another one and just kind of load it in. And in general, everything is kind of laid out the same. So it's like sub, percussive elements, atmosphere, and then some kind of texture type elements, then 16th hats, shakers, a couple of different top loops, a clap, a vocal, and then a couple of different like lead, tonal, interesting like impact sounds or whatever. And so it's always those in every one of them. I kind of set them all up the same way, but it's always different versions of those things, right? So like this sort of tonal thing here, that's here. This will be different in every one, but it'll be a little tonal thing like that in each thing. Or this one is kind of an impact type effect thing, has to loop back around because it plays and then goes away for a little bit. So here it goes again. So in other presets, that will also be a tonal thing, but it won't be that one. And so I know while I'm playing, if I want something like that, I can just reach for it. And I don't necessarily need to know which one it is. So it can work together. And then I have these set up with each slot has volume and pitch. So for example, if let's say I bring in the atmosphere, but I've got something else that's already in that kind of low mid range, and so I need to get it out of the way sonically, I can pitch it up. And I can still have that be a background atmosphere, or I can pitch it way down and have it still be an atmosphere, right? So being able to have the pitch on everything allows me to fit things into the frequency spectrum wherever I have open spaces. So that way I can kind of fill things out and make the tracks sound really full as I play, rather than having it just be a collection of random pieces. Like every piece is kind of placed where it should be. So I keep a lot of tone control and a lot of that over all of the different sounds that I'm putting in, so that I can place them correctly. Even stuff like, for example, hi-hats. So I can pitch these. So I can place those wherever fits correctly in whatever the mix is that I'm doing at that moment, right? So having that flexibility to be able to move things around from a frequency spectrum standpoint is really important, so that you don't have to do a bunch of processing to duck things out of the way, and you don't have a bunch of things canceling each other out and all that stuff. So anyway, let's see what else is here. Coming in late, and wow, the Bohm is wild. It is, isn't it? It's pretty badass. It's a great course. Thanks, Levi. It was great having you in the course. Appreciate that. When did you order the Bohm to receive it now? So I actually didn't order the Bohm. I spoke with them at Superbooth, and they said, would you be interested in checking it out and giving us some feedback on it and letting us know what you like and what you don't like once we've got units that are ready to go? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And then I got a message from them recently that said, hey, we've got one ready. Give us your address. We'll send it. And so they shot it over to me. So it was ordered before they were available. So because it wasn't really ordered. Thankfully don't have the space for it. Yeah, sometimes that's good, right? Sometimes that can replace self-control when you don't have enough space. I find myself with that as well. It may not seem like it sometimes, but I stick myself to this size case. And because this is a travel size that I can take as a carry-on, I don't go larger than this. So for example, to add in the Bohm, I had to make some hard decisions about what comes out of the case. And some of those things I was like, it was hard to get them out, but it was important enough to me to get the Bohm in that I took out those other things that I pulled out, which are now going to go into my studio case, so I can use them there. But but yeah, it's, sometimes limiting yourself to the size of the case or to a particular use is a great way to kind of keep your self-control of being able to, limit what you get. And it also makes it so that, sometimes you'll take stuff out and you'll sell it so that you can get the new thing, and then it's not as expensive as it seems because you're kind of replacing that cost. So yeah, so obviously the Bohm, the whole thing is 36 HP, I think. So obviously a lot had to come out in order to get that in. So yeah, tough decisions always have to be made, but whatever. The good thing is the decisions are never final. The best thing about modular is that you change something out and 2 days from now you're like, oh, I want to do this instead of that. Cool, pull it out, put the other one in, and it makes it very cool. Anyway, let's see. Make me reconsider a second kick to my system. Having it sample isn't as good as you do with the battering ram. Yeah, samples, I mean, if you've watched many of these streams or taken my course or whatever, you'll hear that I'm not a huge sample person, unless it's kind of like loops like this, but like one-shot samples, I don't use very much because I prefer the synth workflow. I prefer being able to shape the sound and make the sound and really kind of, fit it exactly the way I want into what I'm making and adjust it exactly the way I want. And I feel like with samples, I don't always have that same amount of control. Like the dig attack is probably the closest you get to that because you have a lot of control over what it can do with the sample. But yeah, it's really hard to pick that one kick sample and just have it always be the kick sample. Like you could say like, oh, I'm going to do a sample of the battering ram. And it's like, okay, but which kick? Because it can do an infinite number of kick sounds, just like the Bohm can do an infinite number of kick sounds. So which one would you sample and have that be the kick? It's more of a challenge. So for me, I always prefer multiple controls over everything. So synth voices work way better for me than samples. Unless, like I said, unless it's something very standard and something that I can use as a loop. So like, 16th hats, I don't need to mess around with that too much. I mean, yeah, of course it would be nice to go in and tweak each one and change that, but I can always do that here. I can always do that with this one and go in and, change up the velocity and have it do its thing, So if I want to do that, I can still do that because I have control over individual things that I can't necessarily do on a sample. Okay. What else? Let's see here. It's more about HP with a 1010 Bat Boy. I know that's Bitbox because that's what it always autocorrects for me too. To have lots of elements to bring, but lack of parameters for each of them. Yeah, so the Bitbox has, there's a lot of parameters that you can adjust with this. Like I said, I'm using this in a very simple way. Volume, pitch, and I'm using them as loops. But each individual pattern or step, whatever, can be pitched using the keys. You can sequence each individual track can be a multi-track sequencer. You've got song mode, you've got effects by track. You have 2 effects for each track, so you can set up, reverb and delay if you want for each individual track. You've got a mixer page, so you can mute things and you can change volume levels. So you've got a ton of things that you can do with it. I'm just not doing that because for me, I just want this for those things that are the basics that I just need as kind of foundational elements that just keep doing their thing. And everything that I'm going to be tweaking, I'd rather not tweak in a little box with a little menu. I'd rather tweak, with knobs in the hardware. So, but that's just me, right? I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying that for me, I prefer. But you should do what you prefer. So, gotta have fun. Let's see, with the LXR, Erica drum voice and the Ohm pair well. Yeah, probably. I mean, the LXR is kind of like all of this stuff over here. So you'd have another kick, you'd have hats, you'd have percussive voices and things like that. I've used the LXR a little bit. It's not my favorite drum voice, especially kick-wise. I think that the battering ram and the Bohm are significantly better kicks than the LXR. but it would serve the purpose of some of the other stuff here. So like the percussive stuff that I'm doing with the Perkons, you could do some of that with the LXR's percussion voices, and the stuff I'm doing with the Archer's rig and with my cymbal samples, you could definitely do with the LXR. So yeah, just kind of depends on what kind of stuff you're looking for. But there's a lot of multi-channel kind of drum machiney modules that are really good if you're looking for a bunch of stuff in one module instead of having individual modules for each thing. I know that Nano, they just came out with an 808 kind of drum machine type module. I really love the Queen of Pentacles from Endorphins, which has a bunch of synth voices and 2 sample voices. So you can do a lot in one thing. If you just need a couple, there's the Erica Synths sample drum. So if you want to use samples just for things like, let's say, hi-hats that can be pretty simple, you can use the sample drum for that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, lots of options out there. What else? What other questions do you guys have? Jump in and ask whatever. And again, like I said, I'm happy to show whatever too, because I know one thing I noticed before I did this, there's not a lot of Bohm content out there yet because it's kind of fresh out there. And I've been getting a ton of questions online. So I wanted to try to answer as many as I could. So if there's others that I haven't gotten to, please definitely ask away. And if it's something I've been able to figure out in the few days that I've had it, I'm happy to chat about that. Let's see here. What is... That's weird. My chat turned weird on my screen. Let's see, live chat. There we go. Awesome. Let's see. Thanks in kind. Making a 3104 rack to hook up to a Mixa and Circlon. Okay. Queen of Pentacles, an excellent choice also. Yes, it's a very cool one. It's one of the first drum modules I ever got. Trying to get that kind of machine drum type of flavor in the rack. Machine drum flavor is going to be tough because a lot of the sound quality of the machine drum is actually the mechanical lack of sound quality of the machine drum, if that makes sense. Like, it's an old thing with older circuits, with older, it's an older piece of gear, just like a 909. So there's a lot of those imperfections and low quality, like lo-fi bits and kind of bit reduced sounds and all that stuff that just come naturally out of it because it's old. So finding that can be a challenge if you want something like that. I guess if you want a machine drum, find a way to get a machine drum. You're gonna have a hard time replicating a machine drum with other devices. Just like it's hard to, accurately replicate a 909. You can get things close, but it's still not gonna sound like a 909. So I would say go for what you're gonna go and not try to make it sound like something else. You're using the Xcelon in pair with the 1010. Yes, not per track. So I have the main, the master out from the black box coming into the Xcelon XI3 right here in stereo, and that gives me a volume pot and 2 effect sends, which I never use on the inputs. But what that does is it brings it into the master mix, so that way it goes through the ducking, through master effects and all that stuff. So it's not by channel. But again, I don't need it by channel because I basically, the drop becomes kind of the mixer for this. So I've got mixing here and I can kind of sub-mix everything internally, and then it just goes into here as a normal channel. So it's, this acts more like a sub-mixer, and this just brings it into the whole mixing ecosystem. So the ducking works, the master effects, the end of chain processing, all of that works together. Okay. Let's see, about the mixer modules, what are you routing in each channel? Okay, good question. I didn't talk about that. So I like to keep everything super simple because I forget things when I'm playing live. So things tend to go from left to right, the way they are modules in my case, and the way they are through my sequencer. So kick is 1, which is my battering ram. Hat is 2, which is my archer's rig. Perkons Voice is 3, which is here. The Bastille Pizza is 4, which is up above. The BIA is 5, which is also up above. The Erica Synths bassline is 6, which is on the top row. Then the Warp is 7, Polycinematic 8, and then Oxy Choral is 9. And then I just have the only other input I have, which is on 11 for some reason, is the black box. Okay, so that's everything going across. I have them, so this mixer is, all the channels are stereo and it's an all analog mixer, which is very cool. But you can put 2 mono signals on one if you wanted to save space and not have so many expanders. You can put 2 mono signals and then you just switch to crossfade mode by pressing this button, and then the balance becomes a crossfade between those 2 signals. So you could have 2 kicks on one track and it would be the master volume for both kicks, and then you can decide which kick you're going to use based on the balance. The balance becomes a crossfader. So that's really handy for mono stuff, particularly things like kicks and hi-hats. If you wanted to have different ones, you wouldn't need to have each one on its own individual track. Now, that was another thing that's cool about the Bohm, is that it has a built-in volume fader, which meant that I didn't have to run it into the Xcelon. I could run the Xcelon into it, which is great, because then I can just use that as my volume fader for the kick, and that doesn't have anything to do with the main volume from here. So these things are still, these are still coming out of here, going through the Bohm and out. So it was pretty cool the way it ended up working out. I was kind of breaking my brain for a little while trying to figure out exactly how I was going to do it, but it kind of worked out in a way that feels right. I guess feels kind of pseudo normal. So we'll see. I may change it up, but this is the first pass at it. So let's see here. Where are we at? Went for 9U104, 3 synth voices, Vic, Dimension VK3, drums from 1010 Big Box Micro, and Bohm routed to Xcelon. Cool. That sounds like a great setup. I mean, the Bohm is a great kick voice by itself. If you don't already have a battering ram and you have the space, yeah, the Bohm's a great kick voice. If you're looking for just a great kick voice though, without any of the other stuff, I would still go with the battering ram as just a kick by itself. It's hard to compete with the workflow of the 4 knobs and the size and the absolute power and endless sweet spots that you get out of something that's only 8 HP. This is 36 HP for the kick. This is 8. So it's pretty dynamically different, pretty dramatically different. But that said, if you're going to use this stuff anyway, the Bohm is a great kick. It sounds amazing, and you can dial in one of those algorithms to sound exactly the way you want it to sound, and it'll be pretty awesome. So you can't really go wrong either way, but they definitely both have strengths and weaknesses. You know, this is gigantic, so it's a lot of space to give up just for a kick. In that case, I would say that the battering ram wins out. This does more with the kind of expanders, which the battering ram doesn't do. So in that case, this would win. But yeah, they're both great. And ultimately, the best option, I think, is to have them both. But that's just me. Let's see here. Where are we at? Neat setup. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hesitating keeping the circles and Neo Trinity for sequence or switch for Oxy. Yeah, again, personal preference thing. There's something to be said for sequencers that just kind of run and generate stuff, which is cool. I mean, I have some things like that. Like I have the Proteus, I have the Shakmat Bishop's Miscellany, things like that. You can also use the PAMs. You can use all kinds of stuff to kind of generate sequences, which is great. And those, I think, all serve their purpose. The thing I love with the Oxy or any of the other kind of like modern, really good sequencers, Oxy, HapX, Torso, whatever, what I love about them is that you have all of that really interesting randomization capability and the ability to generate stuff just like you can with the others. But then you also have the ability to go in by step and do a lot of really cool stuff. So like with the Oxy, you can go in and hold down the step and you can parameter lock, you can do, velocity, pitch, gate, trig, then you can go to the next page and you can do repeats and ratchets, you can decide how long it ratchets for, you can make it increase in volume when it ratchets, you can make it increase in distance so it starts fast and then slows down. All of that stuff you can do per step on every single step if you want to. You've got probability, so you can do you can have like an 8-step or 16-step sequence that can go on for hours and hours without repeating because you can set probability to do different things. So it's just way more fully functional. But if you don't need that, if you're just looking for something to just kind of randomly generate the bleeps and bloops, which we all love in modular, then there's a lot of sequencers that can do that kind of stuff and that give you a bit of control over how those sound. But if you don't want things to just be kind of like that kind of looping arpeggiation sound, which can be generated by some of those like, like a Euclidean sequencer or something like that. They can just kind of generate these kind of looping arpeggiations almost. If you want more finite control, I would say pick one of the other sequencers instead of taking up that space, and then use that space in your case for other things like effects or modulation or different voices or whatever. So that's what I would do, and that's kind of how I've geared my whole setup. But again, it's a personal preference thing. I love sequencers. I'm a nerd for sequencers. I love playing sequencers live. So I love sequencers that have a lot of control to be able to go in and change up things, change patterns, change individual steps and velocities and probabilities and stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But if you're not into it, then yeah, go for something else for sure. But this has been my choice. And I picked the Oxy for, reasons I've talked about on a bunch of these. But, for me, this one, when I looked at Oxy, HapX, and Torso T1, this one won hands down. Like there was, for me personally, for my use, it wasn't even close. So that's why I went Oxy. So, but anyway, it's going to be whatever's best for you. Let's see here. What do we got? Do you do much modulation in the case or mostly in the Oxy? Neither. I don't do any modulation in the Oxy at all. And I do very little modulation in the case. So I should qualify that. Very little kind of push a button and let it do its thing kind of modulation. So my joke is always, I am the modulation. This is the modulation. So I'm constantly using modulation in the case, but it's manual modulation. I'm not pre-patching something to act in a certain way and then pressing a button and stepping back and letting it act on its own. I don't do much of that kind of modulation. Now that said, one module that I added recently, which I really love, is the Griffin's Claws from Shakmat. And you'll notice right now it's not patched into anything. And what happens is when I'm performing, I'll have patch cables with me on stage. And if I come up with an idea, so like let's say, so we've got our Bastel pizza here, and let's say we want to affect, I don't know, the control knob of that. I can patch this, and I can have, actually, let me do, yeah, I'm gonna have to add some more steps so it doesn't sound so. So now I can control that from here. Let me control something a little bit more interesting. So I can control that from here. And what's really cool with the Griffin's Claws is that I can just hit record. And now it'll keep doing it. So I can patch this, if I get an idea during a show, I can patch in modulation live and I can use that to play. And then if I want to, I can just go direct, and it goes back to my main direct control. And then I can control it here, and then if I take direct off, it goes back to this. Wherever I just leave that, you'll see the modulation happening here. And then if I want to change it, I can just erase the modulation, and I can and then it'll just keep doing it. So if I want to add in modulation that is a modulation that happens on its own, more like automation, I can add that in this way really easily. So that's generally how I would do that here. It's also cool too, because then you can actually just hit erase, and then it's erased, and then you can reuse it. So what I love about this, and I've got a mult next to it, so I can actually have one signal going to here and have that go to different things. So if I get an idea, or if I want to build some complex modulation while I'm playing, it's really fast and easy to do that. And so it's a really interesting module because of that, because you can do that. It's also an attenuator, so you can have things go into it and then record the attenuation going out. I just use it like this because I like that it generates a standard CV, and then you can just use the faders to record. And so it's a really handy way to add in modulation and give yourself extra hands in the case when you get an idea live. Because since my shows are all improvised, I can't pre-patch modulation because I don't know what I'm going to use for what and how I want it to sound and the timing of things and whatever. So patching modulation wouldn't do me any good because it just wouldn't necessarily go with things, and it would kind of limit me as to what I could do because it would only work in a certain way. So this way I can kind of get the best of both worlds. I can do the improvisational show that I want to do while at the same time being able to record some modulation so that it can keep going, you know, if I want to move on to something else and have it keep going that way, if that makes sense, I guess. Let's see, what else? Sounds like an electron sequencer a lot. It does a lot of things that the electron sequencers do. It does a lot more than what the electron sequencers do in some aspects, and it does a lot less than the electron sequencers in other aspects. The real strength of an electron sequencer is being able to parameter lock any parameter inside the device to a step. So like if you want to change, you know, the pitch, open up the decay, add in a delay, open up a reverb, and change the filter cutoff, you can parameter lock all those things to one step and have that happen every time that step comes around. With this, there's things that you can parameter lock that are interior to this, like the ratchets, like the velocities, like pitch, obviously. All those you can lock internally, but the only way to lock to individual parameters of a synth, which you could do, is you would have to set up CCs in here and kind of predetermine which things you wanted to be able to control. So it's a lot more difficult to do that. So if you want to parameter lock things internally in an electron box, use the electron sequencer. Now, what this does better than the electron sequencers is that this can generate random pitch in key, which the electrons can't. So I can set this to a scale and I can randomly generate melodies and separate from gate patterns and have them be in key. And you can't do that in the electron boxes. So when I was using the electron boxes in my live setup, I was sequencing anything melodic from the Oxy, and then I was sequencing other things internally using parameter locks to do things, particularly for drums. So they each have their strengths, but I found myself sequencing the electron boxes all the time with the Oxy, and I very rarely sequenced the Oxy or sequenced anything else with the electron boxes. It's because the Oxy was better at doing that. So anyway, let's see what else here. Yeah, I like to record pitch manually with the Neo Trinity. Really fun to do also. Yeah, and you know, what's interesting with the Oxy, it's, you know, just to kind of go back to what we were talking about here. So if we were doing this, I'll take the effect off to make it easier to hear. Let's make it sound more normal. So basically I have these steps here. If I want to, I can go into the random generation section, and instead of generating a whole new pattern, I can keep this same gate pattern, but just regenerate the pitch within the key that I have set, and I can decide the range and the randomness of this. So then if I just hit this, you notice the rhythm stayed exactly the same, but the notes change. And then I've got undo and redo. So I can go back to where I was before. And then I can generate new ones. And if I want the range to be broader, I can make it way more random. But you notice it still keeps the same gate pattern, right? Change that so you can see the overhead. So yeah, so basically you can set so let's set a pattern. I'm going to shorten this up so you can actually hear the pattern. So let's say we like this pattern. Now I can just generate pitch. And you notice it's the same pattern as before. So being able to randomly generate pitch in key without changing gate is really important. And then the other thing that's cool is with this, once you get those things changed up the way you like them, and you come up with that pattern that you like, you can then go in and change it, right? Let's say you want to add 2 more notes here, and you want to make this go up an octave. And this go up an octave. So it's really hard to do that in a lot of other in the case sequencers, because you can generate something like a Euclidean pattern you can generate, but then you can't go in and add individual notes and modify individual notes, because then it's no longer a Euclidean pattern. So it kind of breaks out of its thing. So this gives you, for me, it gave me a lot of the combination of control with randomness, right? So I can generate and then modify, and then generate and then modify. Or I can write a gate pattern and then generate and get those things, those randomly generated pitch, but still in key, sticking to the gate pattern that I like. So again, the reason I would use something like that is, let's say I had a shorter pattern and I really liked the rhythm of this with my kick. And let's say I really liked that rhythm, but I wanted to do a different type of melody, but still keeping that same rhythm. And then I can go back. Right? So you can see that you can then generate stuff and you can still keep that same kind of rhythmic pattern. So if I like to have control over gate. I don't want this to just randomly chuck gates in there, because as you could see before when we were going over the drum patterns, I like to be able to fit things in so it doesn't become this cluttered up mess. So I like to be able to control the gates and exactly where the rhythmic pattern goes, but then let the machines talk, let them do their thing a little bit and come up with some cool randomized melodic content on that rhythmic content that I've built. And so for me, it becomes a really good conversation with the machines where I put in my bit and then I ask the machine to do its bit. And then I can go in and modify and do my bit, and then it can do its bit again. So again, I can change this up. I'm gonna add effects back in again, because it'll sound way better. So let's say I have something like this, and I decide that I want to change up the pitch. But then I say, okay, that's cool, but now I want to add a couple more notes into it. So you can see you get this really cool interplay because I created the first bit, it generated the notes, and I added something else. Now I've got 4 notes and I can regenerate pitch. And it gives you ways to like create sections of tracks as well really quickly using the undo and redo, right? So let's say I liked those 2 that we were just doing. So I just undid to here. Now if I hold shift and I can redo, and then I can undo. So I can create a whole dramatic arrangement and dynamic arrangement using different parts just by using the generative tools and the undo and the redo. And because you're keeping the gate and randomly generating pitch CV, it allows you to change things while still keeping something known and comfortable in that section. So you're not just randomly generating a bunch of bleeps and bloops and then randomly generating another group of bleeps and bloops that don't have any kind of relationship one to the other. So this keeps the rhythmic relationship as you change the pitch relationship, and it allows you to go back and forth between stuff. So for me, it gives you a ton of power that I don't find I get with any of those kind of random generator type of sequencers. I love them. That's why I have them in my studio case, because in the studio case, I can tweak around for 20, 30 minutes until I find the exact right combination of things and then say, okay, that's cool. Now I'm going to record that. When I'm playing live and improvising, I don't have 20 or 30 minutes to screw around while the audience is looking at me going, what the hell is all this noise you're making, right? So for me, this was the combination of that. That's why I kind of went this way, okay? All right. How easy is it to do Euclidean with Yoxi? All right, let me show you. So let's take 16 steps. So if we go to the trying to think, I never use the Euclidean anymore, so. Thought it was there. You know what? I think it moved on this new version. I don't remember. Let me see. Yeah, it definitely moved. So I think it used to be in with the random generator. I don't know where it is. Anyway, it's really super easy once you find it. Sorry, it's going to seem like it's not easy, but normally as soon as you go to it, you just set the number of steps, the number of pulses, and it generates it, no matter which of the sequencers you're on. So it's just as easy as it is on anything else. You just have to set your number of steps of your length of your pattern, and then you dial in the number of pulses you want, and it generates it as you dial it in. So as you add pulses, it adds them into the Euclidean sequence. So it's very, very easy to generate them. I just usually don't. And it's funny, I used to use Euclidean sequences a bunch when I kind of first experienced them. I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I can come up with these cool rhythms. But I found that it started to sound the same all the time, right? Because like a 12-9 always sounds the same, you know, or a 9-5 always sounds the same. So there's only a certain number of combinations that actually sound good. And so then you end up using those a lot, and then it ends up sounding like really similar rhythmic patterns. And again, going back to the reason why I really like the Oxy is because I get to choose the rhythmic pattern part, right? I get to choose and make it up and come up with something unique and, you know, on the fly, whatever feels right, whatever goes with all the other pieces and parts that I'm playing. And then I can use the randomness to just generate the pitch. Or I can go in and make the pitch myself if I choose, you know, like with this, when you're on a mono sequencer like this, it's cool because you've got pitch and gate. So like I can just generate these notes all down here like that. Yeah, do my full length and have it do. So if I like this rhythm with my kick, it's pretty cool, right? So like I can say like, oh yeah, I like that rhythm. I want to generate something random with this. I don't want it to jump all over the place because I kind of like the monotone aspect. So I'm only going to make it have a 3 semitone range, and I'm going to reduce the randomness way down, which means there's a higher likelihood that 2 steps next to each other will land on the same pitch. If randomness is 100%, they'll never be the same pitch. And if there's 0, they'll always be the same pitch. And then it's everything in between. So I can keep this as my So let's say I like this, and now I've got this parameter set to 3 semitones and my range to 19%, but I want to keep that same pattern. Now I just generate. And I can generate again. Right, so there I've got that going, and I can say like, okay, that's cool. If I want to get it back to the monotone, I can just put the range back to 0 and randomly generate again. And then it goes back to the exact same tone. And then I can change my range again. Let's just go 1 semitone. Or 2. So the most it can move is 2 semitones from the root. So you can keep a tighter rein on the randomness by doing it this way. You can see how quick it is that you can generate something that's interesting. And again, if you want it to go kind of back to its root, and you can undo and redo. And then if we want to do a broader range where you can generate, and let's say you wanted this to be your break, and then you wanted to go back to the monotone thing, you can just undo as soon as you drop back into the beat. again, you can see how easy it is to start off with something, just a rhythmic pattern. And if you find that rhythm that you like, which is Euclidean really generates rhythm, and that's what's cool about it. But again, for me, they sound similar often. So like I'll hear a song and I'll be able to tell which Euclidean pattern it is. With this, I can generate something that I like that has a totally unique groove and rhythm based on everything else that's playing. And then I can turn that into a whole bunch of different melodic things, doing different things using the random generation. And so you can see how quickly that happens. And so that's one of the things I love about the Oxy. Another thing too is you talk about why you would want to generate your own gate. So if we've got something going like, I'll take down the rumble a little bit. Say we're using also the secondary kick. So we've already got a groove. If I then bring in this melodic piece, so if you notice, if we look on one, you can see that on the second step, the fourth step, and the seventh step, I have that secondary kick. So then if we go back to our rhythmic thing here, I've got one on the second step, on the fourth step, and there's nothing on the seventh, right? There's nothing on the second. I can take off the fourth and take off the seventh. And now I know that this isn't hitting any of the places where my secondary kick is hitting. Now I can also go through and I can take off anything that's on a one. And I can keep the feel of the groove with this one, even though I've reduced the number of steps down by 3/4. And now I can go in and I can do things with the pitch that's interesting. And if I want to add those steps back in, I can just undo. And then I can use the duck to get them out of the way. And then I can randomly generate again. Right? So you can see how easy it is to play around with the different sounds and different rhythms if you maintain control over the rhythm. That's the key. So the whole idea today is really to go over drums and percussion, and all of this stuff is percussion, even the melodic stuff, because I'm not doing long pad melody lines. I'm doing percussive, intermittent melodic content. And so it has to fit with the percussion. Otherwise they're going to compete with each other and it doesn't sound great. So this is a way to keep things from getting too cluttered while still having all of the different types of melodic content that you want to have in there. So, all right, more questions. Let's see. Hi man, you've inspired me. Cool. That makes me happy. To try to start without any sequences prepared. It's the only way to go in, I'm telling you. Result was a much worse quality music, but I found out new ways of playing live. Going out of your comfort zone helps. Yes. So it's one of those things, like with anything, if you're going to draw a picture, if you always draw the exact same picture, you're going to get better and better and better at it. And eventually you're going to be an expert at that one picture. And then if somebody says to draw something else, it's going to be way less quality until you've practiced it as much as the first one. And so that's the thing, when you start improvising, you're always going to take a step backwards, right? Because you haven't practiced it. And it's one of the things that we talk about a lot in my course is improvisation is not just winging it, you know, just like chucking stuff out and I hope it sounds good. It's, there's a lot of preparation and a lot of thought in gear, setup, routing, the way you practice, the type of practice sessions you do in order to get good at improvising. And so that's what my whole course is about how to improvise, right? Because if it was just about winging it, it would be a really short course. You would come on and I would be like, cool, welcome, have fun making techno. That would be the whole course. But what it is it's really about how to set things up, how to organize, how to structure things, and then how to practice with that setup and that organized structure in order to be able to improvise. And the analogy that I like to use in the course a lot is if you're I don't know, Prince or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix or a great guitar soloist, you don't just grab any guitar and go out there and just wing it. First thing you have to do is you have to set up your guitar. You have to tune it so that you know which note is which, so that when you get an idea, you can improvise that idea into a structure that makes sense. So all of what we talk about in the course is how to select modules, how to select hardware boxes, how to select gear, and then how to connect it, how to use it to control the other pieces in a way that makes sense for improvisation. I have this whole case over here, which you can see, this whole case, which you can't see all of it because my face is in the way, but this is all modules that I love the sound of, but that are not good for improvisation. So I don't take them with me when I go to play a show. These are all modules that are really good for improvisation. So I built this case purposefully to be able to improvise live. So it's set up in a way that lends itself to writing music on the fly in front of a crowd, right? And so there's a lot that goes into that, and it's not just winging it. But when you start, you're always going to sound worse than that pre-prepared track that you spent 6 days to write, and you press play and then it plays by itself and it sounds really cool. That's one way to play live, and then just like tweak filters. That's a really safe way to play that track. Then you run into a lot of the difficulties of how do I get from that track to another track and have it sound good? Do all my tracks make sense? What if the audience isn't responding to my tracks? Can I adapt? Do I have enough other tracks that I can modify my set to make it go with the audience? So there's a lot of things that are much more challenging to playing pre-prepared sets than improvisation. But improvisation isn't just winging it. There's all of the time that, you know, I have good friends like EasyBot, for example. He writes music and then he performs that music live. He spends hours and hours and days and weeks writing music to be able to play it live. I spend hours and hours and days and weeks practicing improvising so that when I play live, I can improvise live. So we're both putting in the same amount of work. We're just going at it from a different direction, right? One is a more production-based and preparation-based, and the other is more improvisational. Obviously, that's the easy word, but it's more kind of free-flowing and more like artistic in the moment. And the other one is artistic over the course of making the art previously. And then you've got a way that you present it. So they're just different ways to do the exact same thing, right? But you'll always sound worse when you start improvising, but it does get better, I promise. Let's see, what do we have here? May have just pre-ordered the MK2. Wonder why that would be, James. Mute mode looks super sweet. It is cool, like this performance mode in the Mark II. Here, I'll switch to it so you can see. I don't use it a lot, but it's pretty cool. So you have, on one page, you have the ability to mute every sequence. So like if you're playing and you've got all these things, this is gonna sound horrible, but if you have all these things playing together, you can actually go through and mute them here. And whenever it's a multi-track, like my drums, you've got your mutes here. So you can mute everything. And then you also have, within this, you have the ability to transpose. That's what these are over here. So these are different when it's a multi-track. These are kind of fill effects. So like, right? But these ones, so these ones are transposed. So obviously you've got mute here, but when it's unmuted, now you can do. So it becomes really interesting to play. So that's all playing this sequence that's not changing pitch, but it's transposing the whole sequence up and down using the performance mode. So that can become something really cool as well. So yeah, this mode is really cool. I have not really used this much at all. I don't know. I don't know why. I probably should, but I'll find my way around to it. It's one of the cool things with devices like this, or like the black box, or like the Octatrack, or like anytime you have a device that does so many things, I find myself using it in a certain way, and then every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I should try this other thing, and all of a sudden I have like all of this new cool stuff that I can do, and it's like getting a new piece of gear. So yeah, you're right, James. I should use performance mode more. Good idea. Good idea. Let's see. Totally trust you. Good. You don't have to trust me, but this comes from experience. Like I said, I've had over 100 people that have gone through my course this year, and I think there's a lot of them that are in the chat right now. I think they will vouch for the idea that there's a moment where you take a step back because you're pushing into a new direction. But if you commit to that and you really work at it, that's, improvisation is a skill you can build up just like composition. So it's like, if you take the time to work on one, you can definitely get better at it, 100%. So let's see. What do you do when something you make live doesn't sound good? Do you try to change it, stop it, pretend it's what you wanted to do and go forward, or do you do something else? So I will give you a little window into part of the course. Something that we talk about a lot in the course is that when you're improvising, by the nature of the fact that you are writing the music live in the moment for the first time it's ever been heard, I am a firm believer that that means that nothing can be a mistake, because a mistake is only when things don't sound the way they were supposed to sound. So nobody in the audience has ever heard this before. You've never heard it before. So it's not supposed to sound any particular way. So that frees you up creatively to go in whatever direction you choose. If you decide that something you make doesn't sound the way you wanted it to sound, well, that doesn't mean it's a mistake, and it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that that's your new reality. That happened. So what do? Do you pull back? Do you lean into it and have that change the direction of what you're doing? Or do you, do the Prince method and do it 3 more times and make it sound like it's on purpose? Figure out what you're going to do with that thing. But that happens all the time. I mean, that'll happen 10 times in a set for me, where I'll do something and it doesn't have the exact sound that I thought was going to come out when I started doing that thing. So then I have the choice then of how I react to that. But the important thing to remember is that the audience listening has never heard this before, and honestly, neither have you. So that might be, as far as they know, that could be what you were trying to do. So you could decide to lean into it and go that direction, change key, change rhythm, change whatever. Or you can work your way out of it, or you can modify it if it's a sound design thing or a volume level thing. But you have the choice to do it. And I think we get stuck in our head that it needs to sound a certain way, and if it doesn't, it's wrong. And when you're writing music live for a crowd, it can never be wrong, right? It can be something that you like or don't like. It can be something that they like or don't like, but it can never be wrong, because it wasn't already made. It's being made right now. So it just is, right? It's not correct or incorrect. It just is. So if you get into that mentality, improvisation becomes much more comfortable, because the only time that we can say something is wrong is if we predetermined in our head the way something was supposed to sound, right? But the audience has no idea. They didn't hear what was in your head. So then it's just a matter of how you react to it, right? But there's no way for it to be right or wrong. It just is. Very Zen, right? Things just are. Anyway, so yeah, I do a lot of different things. Um, Good day. I'm assuming that's somebody coming from Australia. What's going on, man? In jazz, when you make a mistake improvising, you make it again. Now it's intentional. Exactly. That's what I mentioned, the Prince thing. There was an interview with Prince years ago, and they said, you're one of the greatest guitar soloists ever, and you never make a mistake. And he laughed, and he's like, I make mistakes all the time, but I just do it 3 more times in time, and people think it was on purpose. And if you listen closely to any of my live sets, when you come watch me play sometime, listen closely. I will do that 4 or 5 times throughout a set, where I'll do something and it's like, that wasn't the way that I was thinking it was going to sound. So I'm just going to repeat it in time 3 more times. So I've done it 4 times. Now it makes a little phrase, and now I have the choice. I can either take it out, I can put it in, I can bring it halfway, I can do whatever, but I've made that into part of the track. And yeah, as we talked about it in ObCon last year, there's a lot of similarities between jazz and techno, in that you have a lot more freedom because there aren't these rigid rules of it has to be a certain way. There are some, general kind of genre structure, but there's no rules. The idea is that it should be unique and interesting and futuristic and whatever. So you can make it sound any way you want. And that goes along with that idea of improvised live performance, because then you can make those things happen any way you choose. It's totally up to you. You have the freedom as an artist to make it sound any way you want, which is one of my favorite things about it. So anyway, you seem to never push a mixer fader that far. Is it too loud or any reason for it? It kind of depends. So like I have certain modules that are really super loud. They're really hot. So like the battering ram, if I push that all the way up and have it go all the way up, you'll see that it's peaking already. So, and that's with the gain all the way at 0. That's just the heat coming out of there. So what I generally do, and I don't have this patched right now because I just quickly patched this case when I put it back together yesterday, normally come out from there into an attenuator and then into the mixer. And I do that with the battering ram and the Erica Synths bassline. Those two are crazy loud, and so they peak, as soon as they come into your case. And that's this one. You can see here. If I turn this up, you'll see this one peaks, and that's the bassline, and then the battering ram. Those are just really loud. So I never push those all the way up. And then everything else, it's just kind of a matter of how I like it to be here. So like hats, I push all the way to the max a lot because the Archer's rig isn't as loud and I actually have it gained up. So this one, I'll push all the way to the max often. But with this one, so if you look at the level meters, these are kind of at the same level now. And if I drive this up, it becomes way higher than this. And it's also just a matter of how I want things to be in the mix. Right? Do I want it to take everything? Do I want it to take up all the space? Like they could, but then it just sounds like a cluster, right? So I would rather have it be yeah, and for me, I play the mixer a lot. I was talking recently with Adam at Boredbrain, and we were talking about that. One of my favorite things about the Xcelon mixer is that I play the mixer like an instrument, right? So I'm constantly, my hands are always on the mixer, and the only time I take them off is if I'm doing something with a voice and then I'm back to doing something in the mixer, because maybe it goes back to my DJ days, but for me, it's all about getting the levels right, getting the right settings with effect sends, gain, all of that stuff, and making sure that it all sounds like a cohesive, correct mix and not just loud, right? And so because of that, it's the mixer for me is a real instrument as much as it is a tool. So I'm trying to level set in ways that make sense. Now, generally, I level set to the kick. And so when I have this going through an attenuator so that it doesn't come in peaking all the time, and when I wasn't using the Bohm, this would be all the way up. That was kind of my level for level set. And then I would bring other stuff in. So then I can bring things in so that they all match up with the kick. Now what's a little different is that the Bohm has its own level set, and I'm just using all the way up as my level here. So then I'm gonna bring these in. I don't want this to take over for that, so I'm gonna find the right level for that one. So I'm gonna find that right level off of the full level kick, right? So for me, the kick is always kind of like, that's where everything starts. That's where the level starts. And then I level set off the kick so that it will always be kind of the most important element, the more focused element, rather than trying to get everything loud and making it all fit together, if that makes sense. Let's see, what else? Do you have a cue mix in your setup? No, I do not. I mean, kind of. So I have my main, because when I play now, I've just had so many bad experiences with bad monitoring. And it's really hard to play live if you don't have good monitoring, because you're live mixing and mastering at the same time. And so you have to be able to hear clearly, and my ears are awful. And so with bad ears and bad monitoring, I was finding that my mixes didn't sound really good at all. So now I'm using in-ear monitors, which I have right now. You can hear it, that's what I'm using here. And they come out from right here, from the monitor module. There's a headphone out with a headphone level. So I use that just to listen to my my main mix, but it's end of chain main mix. After everything, all the processing, it's the same mix that's going out to the house. So that way I can use that in my in-ears to keep the level lower and actually set things correctly. But I'm not using it as a cue. I'm just using it as a master monitor. I'm using headphone monitors or in-ear monitors instead of speaker monitors, just because I find they're generally better. Let's see what else. Is the course just geared towards techno? Really interested, but I don't compose techno. No, it is non-gear specific and non-genre specific. Obviously, if you're doing techno, you're going to probably get more out of it, but I'm a big believer that you get a lot out of all different genres. Like, I have some of the YouTubers that I like to follow is like, I love Marlo Diggs, who does like hip hop sample chopping. I don't sample chop and I don't make hip hop, but I love his stuff and I learn a lot from him every time I watch his videos. I love watching Ura's videos, and we make totally different kind of music, but I always learn something from his videos. So yes, I definitely lean towards techno myself, but all of the things that we talk about, it isn't a course about how to use the gear. It isn't a course about how to make techno. It's a course about how to improvise live electronic music. So no matter what your setup is, you know, hardware, software, I've had people that have done this course with a Digitact and an iPad. I've had people with just a Push 3. I've had people with racks of modular. It's like, it's for all different styles and all different types of gear and all different styles of music. What you learn is relevant to all of that. So yeah, I would recommend it if you want to learn how to improvise live electronic music. That's the key. It doesn't really matter the type of electronic music you're doing. Let's see here. Nice way of thinking about it. I don't know what that was about, but cool. I'm glad. Do you practice specific tracks? So when you play, you know most of the things you're going to do, and the result is always something familiar. I guess this is one way to guarantee success. No, I do not. So what I do is when I go to play a live show, the first thing that I do when I get there is I set up my gear to do sound check, and then I will just press play with whatever was in my sequencer with the last live stream I did or the last practice session I did or whatever. I'll just take whatever was there that auto saved, and I use that and I jam some stuff out for my sound check. As soon as the sound check is finished, I go into my sequencers and I'll just go like this and do delete, and I just delete everything. So then when I step up to play my live show, I start out with blank sequencers. The only things that I have already are the few loops that are in the black box, but they're not really anything structural to any song or anything. So no, every single set is 100% completely unique from every single other set. You'll never hear anything repeated unless it's one of these loops. So like you might hear a vocal in the same set as another set because I only have a certain number of vocals. But other than that, other than the tracks themselves, or other than the loops themselves, everything else is completely unique to each set. And that's an intentional thing. Like when I set out to do play live, my idea was I wanted to write music in the moment for the moment. So like I want to be inspired by the crowd and the room and the time of night and the vibe and the heat and the lighting. I want to be inspired by that stuff, and I want to write the music that's the soundtrack to that stuff and that makes people have a great time at the party. And I can't do that by pre-preparing tracks because I never know what's going to be going on in the moment. And like when you DJ, you try to have a whole ton of music so you can try to best match the moment that you can and kind of guide the evening the best way you can. But with this, I can do it right down to the level of every hit of every hi-hat, right? And so for me, it's really freeing to be able to do it like this. But yeah, everything is unique, so there's nothing kind of pre-planned, or I rehearse how to improvise, but I don't rehearse tracks or any of that stuff. So anyway, are you performing at KnobCon? I'm planning to. I haven't heard back yet. We're talking about it, so I hope so. I figured out a way to send individual channels to headphone in my setup, but when I try to sequence live on headphones, it takes too long and the music that plays live doesn't progress. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier on in this, that yeah, that's the same for me. I don't cue and write in headphones for that very reason, because as soon as you put the headphones on, you disconnect from the party. And because you're not playing whole tracks like a DJ, the music's not evolving if you're not evolving it. So once you get back in, you've lost count of where you are. And so you don't know if that's played too long or not long enough, or is it the right moment for a break or a build up or whatever. You just have no idea. So it's important to always kind of stay in the event as you're playing the event, right? So not to disconnect, not to get out of the event, if that makes sense, I think. Yeah. So anyway, hey Brian, what's going on? Welcome. Good to see you. Are you using the AB mixer option? Oh, so the Xcelon mixer has two different output mix buses. So I have everything going out on A right now, and I have all of the things set to AB. They should probably all be set to A. I should probably change that. So my plan is everything's being mixed and going out on the A bus. What I'm going to connect this weekend actually is I'm going to take the B bus and put that into the input in the black box, and I'm going to free up one channel in the black box to become a looper channel, so that I can switch something to AB so that it's still playing through the mix, but it's also going uniquely to the black box, and I can hit record with a predetermined length. I can record a loop, and then I can play that, and then I can take that voice out, change it to something else, and have that continue to play. So it's kind of like a hybrid of the way Blauan does his sets, where he's looping things and layering on top, and that gives me the ability to loop and layer with everything that's in the case. So I will be using the B-Mix for that, but I have not been using the B-Mix for anything up to this point. Let's see, when you're practicing, do you record the output or multi-track? So not really when I'm practicing, but sometimes. I tend to keep my practice exploration sessions and my production sessions separate, but I can. So the way this particular rig is set up, I could only record the main out. Prior to this, prior to yesterday, I had this module in my case, which is the Boredbrain IO. I just didn't have space for it in this version. I'm going to figure out a way to get it back in here. And what this has is connections on the back that come out from the mixer through cables that are on the back, and then you just place this somewhere in your case, and this gives you stereo outputs from every channel on all of your mixer channels, so then you can multi-track out. And this can either go out to a audio interface, so you could go out multi-track into individual channels in an audio interface, or I also have the Boredbrain Optics, which is in my studio case right now, which is a module about this size, which has ADAT out, and you can just patch this straight across to the optics and then go ADAT out to a mixer, and then that allows you to multi-track via ADAT. You could do that to a mixer, to an audio interface, to a push 3, all kinds of things, anything that has an ADAT input, and that would give you multi-tracking out from here. So right now, this is not set up to multi-track, but I was up until yesterday. So I got to figure out priorities of when I want to multi-track and what I want to have in the case. So we'll see. But anyway, sorry for the blast of questions, but it's 12 p.m. here in the UK and I can't watch the whole stream now. Well, actually, we're getting close to the end, so you made it through. I appreciate it. I appreciate the questions. Do we have any more questions? If you do, I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to go over anything. I mean, the whole point of this was the Bohm and this new setup with drums and percussion, how to program those, how to use the gear to make that interesting. But yeah, it's not, it doesn't just have to be about that. So if you've got other questions, happy to answer those as well. So chuck those in here. So instructive scream. You're welcome. 1 a.m. here. Check the rest of the stream tomorrow. Well, I think this will be the rest of the stream. I think I'm going to call it a day here because we've gotten a lot of good info out there. A lot of great questions. I appreciate it, all the questions, and all of you guys. I appreciate you joining me here. Jump in the course if you're interested. I would love to have you. Like I said, it's 50% off right now. You just use code HAPPY100 because you just hit 100 students. Use that and you'll get 50% off any of the courses if you sign up today. And I can move you to another month if this month doesn't work. So take advantage of the discount, and then I'll put you into another month if you want to move it to another time. So yeah, I'd love to see you in the course. It's in-depth versions of all of this, videos, one-on-one chats, Zoom calls, so we can actually question and answer. I can do demos about this stuff, and I can give you feedback on your music as well. So yeah, so check it out. Go to circlelive.com/courses, and you can see the outline of the course and everything that's in it, and then you can go ahead and grab it online there. So hope to see you then. Thank you guys all for joining me. I appreciate it. It's always fun to hang out instead of doing this by myself in my basement. It's nice to hang out with some other people and actually have a conversation. So thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it, and have tons of fun making